Chapter 1160. The status of this man and woman in Shadow Moon Hall was obviously not low, otherwise, it would have been impossible for them to sit next to Qian Tong. When the other young disciples standing next to them looked at the two of them, there was a hint of envy in their eyes. Elder Qian, you have a good relationship with Manager Yang. Do you know what this finale item is? One of the female disciples standing nearby asked curiously. Qian Tong's expression was serious, as if he hadn't heard the female disciple's words. Seeing him like this, everyone couldn't help holding their breaths, feeling more and more that this finale item was extraordinary. Elder Qian Tong definitely knew some inside information, otherwise, he wouldn't have such a dignified look on his face. Luo Qing. Qian Tong suddenly shouted. Disciple is here. Luo Qing, who had been standing to the side, quickly stepped forward. How many saint crystals did you raise? Luo Qing quickly replied respectfully. Disciple has followed Elder's instructions and managed to raise 50 million saint crystals, but a large part of it was transferred from the sect. 50 million. Qian Tong narrowed his eyes slightly. I still have nearly 30 million, so we have about 80 million saint crystals. Inside the private room, most people were shocked. Even if they were from Shadow Moon Hall and had high status in the sect, 80 million saint crystals still shocked them. What shocked them even more though was that Qian Tong actually muttered to himself, I wonder if that's enough. The beautiful woman sitting next to Qian Tong finally couldn't help asking, Master, what is this finale item? Even 80 million saint crystals isn't enough. She wasn't the only one who was curious. Even the other handsome man who had been wearing a calm expression was curious, turning his head to look at Qian Tong, hoping he could explain. From the start of the auction until now, the most expensive item up for auction was the exquisite twin forks that had been auctioned before, but that had only sold for 2.1 million saint crystals. Could the finale be an Origin King grade artifact? If it really was an Origin King grade artifact, 80 million saint crystals might not be enough, but where would Treasure Trove Pavilion find such an item? You don't understand. Qian Tong laughed bitterly. 80 million seems like a lot, but other people probably have even more. My Shadow Moon Hall is one of the great forces on Shadowed Star. However, compared to Thunder Typhoon Sect, Star Emperor Sect, and Heaven Battling Union, there was still a gap between them and Colored Glass Sect. Grand Fire Sect. Twin Heart Valley. Floating Mist Palace and the other great forces are also stronger than us. I'm just afraid they've collected even more saint crystals. Master, what exactly is that thing? The delicate and pretty girl asked again. See for yourself. Qian Tong was not in the mood to answer. Because even if he answered, these juniors might not be able to recognize the value of that thing. It would be easier for them to understand if he explained it after everyone had started to fight for it. The people in the private rooms no longer spoke and all turned their eyes towards the auction stage. Blackface Yang Pei stood there, his eyes sweeping around as he loudly declared, This old master, Yang Pei, would like to thank everyone for participating in my Treasure Trove Pavilion's auction this time. The auction has progressed to this point, and this old master is generally satisfied. The only thing that displeases this old master is that everyone is holding their wallets too tightly. This old master hopes that everyone can bring out the imposing manner and boldness of a great sect and great force. There is no need to give face to others or my Treasure Trove Pavilion. If you fancy something, so what if you go bankrupt? As long as you can obtain it, it's fine. Yang Pei's blunt words made all the experts in the private rooms suck in a breath of cold air. This old black face harbored evil intentions. Listening to his tone, it seemed that he would only give up after all of them went bankrupt. It was truly too vicious. There were even many people who had the thought of immediately leaving this place. If they stayed, they might really go bankrupt. Yang Pei, however, did not give them a chance and continued, without further ado, I will now introduce this auction's finale item. With a wave of his hand, a woman in palace robes immediately walked up with a jade plate. The jade plate was covered with a red cloth, making it impossible for anyone to see what was inside, causing everyone to grit their teeth in anger. The woman in palace robes stood in front of Yang Pei and Yang Pei loudly declared, Everyone, open your eyes wide and look carefully. Saying so, she lifted the red cloth and revealed a long red whip on the jade plate. This long whip's shape was smooth, with sections like a scorpion's tail that were tightly connected without any gaps. The tip of the whip was like a sharp spike that flickered with a dark green light. At a glance, it was clear that this spike was extremely poisonous. Dragon-beating whip, Yang Pei shouted. In room C13, Yang Kai had just taken a sip of tea when he heard the name Yang Pei gave to this long red whip and almost spat it out. The treasure trove pavilion had given the previous twin prongs the exquisite twin prongs. It wasn't a bad name, but it was a mediocre name. This long red whip was called Dragon Beating Whip by Yang Pei, a truly domineering name. Old Blackface's face was really thick, daring to give it such a name. Burning gazes came from all directions as countless divine senses swept over this item, causing the sounds of discussion to ring out in the private rooms of the hall. Yang Pei quickly shouted, "This is a genuine origin-grade mid-rank artifact. According to the appraisal of my treasure trove pavilion's grandmasters, the main material of this whip is the tail of the ninth-order monster beast, the scarlet-tailed purple-armored scorpion, supplemented by a variety of origin-grade ores. This old master will not explain what an origin-grade mid-rank artifact represents, as everyone here should be clear in their hearts. This is a work of art that far surpasses the standard of artifact refining on Shadowed Star. This whip is over 20 meters long and can be changed in length by pouring Saint Chi into it. What's more, the Grandmaster who refined this dragon-beating whip perfectly preserved the toxicity of the scarlet-tailed purple-armored scorpion's tail. Although it is somewhat sinister, it greatly increases the power of this dragon-beating whip," Yang Pei said as he picked up the dragon-beating whip from the jade plate and swung it around the high platform, letting everyone feel the power of an origin-grade mid-rank artifact. Sure enough, upon seeing the power of this dragon-beating whip, countless people's breathing became rapid. After a while, Yang Pei put the dragon-beating whip back. At that moment, a voice rang out from one of the private rooms in a block, "Manager Yang, is this the thing you said would make us go bankrupt? Although origin-grade mid-rank artifacts are rare, they aren't enough to break our bones. I thought Treasure Trove Pavilion had collected an origin king-grade artifact this time. We were all looking forward to it, but it turned out to be just an origin-grade mid-rank artifact." Yang Pei stood there, as if he hadn't heard anything, only a faint sneer on his face. The people in the private rooms had all received the news in advance and had ordered people to collect Saint crystals, but no one knew what kind of precious item Treasure Trove Pavilion had taken out this time. After all, this was a secret, so Yang Pei wouldn't spread it around. He also believed that with Qian Tong's shrewdness, it was impossible for them to leak any information to others. Each of them had collected a lot of Saint crystals, but now they only had a single origin-grade mid-rank artifact, which was naturally disappointing and made them feel like they were making a big fuss over a minor issue. However, this artifact still had to be snatched. With an origin-grade mid-rank artifact in front of them, even if they couldn't win it, they had to raise the price as much as possible to make others suffer. For a time, everyone secretly waited with the mentality of harming others without benefiting themselves. Yang Pei then said something that made everyone cough up blood: "This artifact is most suitable for women. Even if you can't use it yourself, you can buy it and give it to a woman you like. This old master can guarantee that any man who buys it will be able to win the heart of a beautiful woman." Disrespectful old bastard. Inside the private room of Colored Glass Sect, Yin Su Dai ground her teeth and cursed. The reason she hadn't snatched the exquisite twin daggers just now was because she wanted to wait and see if there was anything better coming up. Sure enough, now that the Dragon Striker Whip had appeared, she had secretly made up her mind to snatch this Dragon Striker Whip. She also believed that with her popularity, once she made a bid, many people would give up trying to compete with her, but she hadn't expected Yang Pei to say such words. Wasn't this just creating a lot of competition for her? A middle-aged woman next to Yin Su Dai gently patted her hand and comforted her. "Rest assured, we'll definitely win it." "Thank you, second madam." Yin Su Dai smiled sweetly. Dragon Striker Whip, starting price 1 million, each increase must be no less than 100,000. Everyone, make your bids. Yang Pei had said everything he needed to say and had roused the mood of the crowd, so now it was time to watch people fight to the death. This was his favorite part of the auction. Every time someone fought to the death, he would feel happy and feel many years younger. As soon as his voice fell, the sound of bidding immediately rang out from the various private rooms. 1,100,000. 1,300,000. 1,500,000. 2 million. The masters who had been constantly belittling this dragon striker whip seemed to have forgotten what they had just said and began bidding with red eyes. Not only were there masters and masters from various great forces participating in this bidding war, but there were also some rising stars among them. I bid 2,100,000. Chu Chang-feng of Heaven Battling Union was always so confident in his bid, as if he was born to be superior to others, as if others should give in to him. 2,300,000. The one who opposed Chu Chang-feng was always Fang Tianzhong of Thunder Typhoon sect. The two of them came from one of the top great forces on Shadowed Star, so their reputation and strength were on par, so neither of them feared the other. Brother Fang, why do you want to buy this Dragon Striker whip? It's not suitable for you, isn't it just a waste of money? Chu Chang-feng grinned meaningfully and continued to bid, 2,500,000. I can't use it, but you can? 2,800,000. Fang Tianzhong did not back down. I'm naturally buying it as a gift. I heard that junior sister Yin of Colored Glass sect is currently in need of an artifact, so this junior brother wants to use this opportunity to offer Buddha 3 million. This was a blatant display of love, and it was done in front of all the masters from Shadowed Star's great forces, causing many of them to hiss in disbelief. Inside Colored Glass sect's private room, the middle-aged woman's face went cold while Yin Sudai's expression was also very unpleasant. She didn't want to be involved in any scandals because of today's events, so she softly said, Brother Chu's good intentions, Sudai appreciates, but if I want this Dragon Striker whip, naturally I will bid for it. 3,200,000. Chapter 1161. Yin Sudai didn't want to bid so early because she really liked this Dragon Striker whip. She had never owned an Origin grade mid-rank artifact before, and now that she was entering the Liu Yang Sandfield, who knew what kind of dangers she would encounter? Having such an artifact would greatly increase her safety. However, Chu Chang-feng had actually led the topic to her, which really annoyed Yin Sudai. Even if she didn't want to bid, she had no choice but to do so. Although Colored Glass sect wasn't as strong as Heaven Battling Union, it still had the ability to buy an Origin grade mid-rank artifact, so there was no need for Chu Chang-feng to cause such a stir and ruin the reputation of her sect. As soon as Yin Sudai bid, everyone knew what she was thinking. Obviously, she didn't want to accept Chu Chang-feng's favor. For a time, many people cast meaningful glances towards Heaven Battling Union's private room, showing gloating expressions. Chu Chang-feng, however, didn't care at all and simply declared, since junior sister Yin wants to bid, this Chu will not overstep his authority. Junior sister Zhu wins this treasure, so I ask everyone to show mercy. Junior sister Yin rarely bids, so please don't disappoint her. His words were spoken casually, but these half-harsh half-soft words still made many people unhappy. There was nothing they could do about it though. After all, this man was a member of Heaven Battling Union. Only Thunder Typhoon sect and Star Emperor sect could be compared to Heaven Battling Union. These three great forces were recognized as the most powerful on Shadowed Star. Sure enough, after Chu Chang-feng finished speaking, no one in the noisy auction hall increased the price. Even Fang Tianzhong, who had been opposing him tit for tat, fell silent. Inside the private room of Shadow Moon Hall, the delicate woman stared at the Dragon Striker whip with a look of excitement. Qian Tong glanced over at her and asked, Xian do you want this artifact? The delicate woman called Xian beautiful eyes flashed for a moment before she shook her head. Xian doesn't want it. You really don't want it? Qian Tong asked, if you want it, we can bid for it now. The woman smiled lightly, it's true, master. If it was just an ordinary Origin grade mid-rank whip, I would still want it, but the poisonous spike at its end is quite insidious, so Xian doesn't want it. The handsome young man who had not spoken until now grinned and said, Junior sister Xian has a kind heart. Even if she encounters injured animals, she will bring them back for treatment. That poisonous spike at the end of the whip really is quite a contrast with her temperament. I like junior sister Xian most. Hearing the young man say such words in front of so many people, the delicate and pretty woman couldn't help but blush. Seeing this, Shen's is to uts to be to her, to be to herself to not to t. How could he not know that his disciple's words were an excuse? But Shen's dies would of course is Shen's too. After all, Yin Su Dai had already started bidding, and Chu Chang Feng was obviously helping her. These two juniors were playing an ambiguous game, so Chen Tong didn't put them in his eyes. He believed that even if he bid for this whip, he wouldn't really offend Colored Glass Sect and Heaven Battling Union, but what if he spent Saint Crystals now and didn't have enough Saint Crystals to buy the final item? It was precisely because Chen Tong knew better than anyone how precious the final auction item was that Shadow Moon Hall hadn't made a single move during this Treasure Trove Pavilion's auction and had instead been saving their strength for the final battle. His disciple's understanding made Chen Tong feel both warm and bitter. He was an elder of Shadow Moon Hall. When had he ever had to think twice before buying an artifact for his disciple? Just as he was feeling sad, the handsome young man suddenly shouted, 3,500,000. The appearance of this price caused the originally quiet auction hall to once again burst into discussion. Like I said, it's impossible for an origin-grade mid-rank artifact to sell for only 3,200,000. Finally, someone has increased the price. Who is this? So bold, isn't he afraid of being targeted by Chu Chang Feng? He's also from an A-block private room, not a small force. What's there to be afraid of? This is Shadow Moon Hall's private room. I remember Chen Tong's voice coming from inside. The one who bid is the most talented disciple of Shadow Moon Hall, Wei Guchang. His personal strength is no worse than Fang Tianzhong and Chu Chang Feng's. It's him. Then he must be buying it for Dong Xiena. I heard that the two of them grew up together and have long since developed feelings for each other. I wonder if that's true or not. Inside the private room of Shadow Moon Hall, Dong Xiena looked at Wei Guchang in amazement, seemingly not having expected him to directly bid. Wei Guchang smiled and said, if you want it, we'll bid for it, no need to care about others. Saying so, he turned to Chen Tong and asked, Elder Chen, can I mobilize these several million Saint Crystals? Chen Tong smiled lightly, yes. He was greatly relieved. Dong Xiena was his disciple, and although he and Wei Guchang were not master and disciple, Chen Tong had been teaching him cultivation for many years. Although they were not master and disciple, their relationship was closer than that. Both of them had excellent aptitude, and Chen Tong felt that if they had not been born on Shadowed Star and had instead been born outside, they would have had greater achievements in the future. What satisfied Chen Tong the most was that Wei Guchang took good care of Dong Xiena, doting on her like an elder brother and tolerating some of Dong Xiena's personality. On top of that, Dong Xiena also had a calm temperament and did not have the shortcomings of disciples from great forces. It could be said that these two disciples were the most outstanding in Shadow Moon Hall and were regarded by Chen Tong as the sect's greatest hope. Now that Wei Guchang was participating in this auction for Dong Xiena, Chen Tong naturally supported him 4 million. Inside Colored Glass Sect's private room, Yin Su Dai's voice called out again. Although her voice was flat, Yin Su Dai inside the private room was secretly gnashing her teeth. Originally, if not for Wei Guchang's bid, she might have been able to buy the Dragon Striker whip for 3.2 million Saint Crystals, but now that Wei Guchang had jumped out, the price had increased significantly. It was tantamount to spending money in vain. On the high platform, the black-faced Yang Pei was calm and unmoving like a mountain. Only when he wasn't paying attention would the corners of his mouth curl up into a faint sneer, which would disappear immediately. An origin-grade mid-rank artifact, wanting to buy it for between 3 million and 4 million? If this old master doesn't sell it for more than 10 million today, this old master won't be called the chief auctioneer of Treasure Trove Pavilion. Just now, even if Wei Guchang hadn't bid, someone else would have, so Blackface Yang Pei wasn't worried about this Dragon Striker whip selling for a low price. 4.2 million. Inside Shadow Moon Hall's private room, Wei Guchang raised the price again almost without hesitation. 4.5 million. Yin Su Dai also seemed to have become angry, and although her voice was still soft and pleasant, her tone was quite anxious. Wei Guchang was about to raise the price again when Chen Tong suddenly shook his head, "Don't bid anymore." Wei Guchang looked at Chen Tong and asked puzzledly, "Why? Even if this Dragon Striker whip is sold for a few million, it won't be expensive. Yes, but if it ends up in our hands, we will lose the qualification to compete for the final item. And, do you think old Yang Pei is a vegetarian? He will make colored glass sect bleed. There's no need for us to participate. There's another auction item. Wei Jiu Chang was shocked and Dong Xian also asked curiously, didn't Senior Yang just say that this was the finale of the auction? Can't the finale have 2 items? Qian Tong grinned meaningfully before turning to Wei Guchang and saying, Xian already understands your intentions, that's enough, there's no need to continue bidding. I understand. Wei Guchang wasn't a person like Chu Chang Feng who acted wantonly to win a smile from a beautiful woman, so when Qian Tong said so, he immediately understood the elder's meaning and no longer increased the price. With Wei Guchang not bidding, everyone thought he had withdrawn from the competition and couldn't help feeling a little disappointed. Blackface Yang Pei rolled his eyes towards the box in Shadow Moon Hall and spat disdainfully, old dog, how cunning. He didn't seem to realize that he and Qian Tong were both difficult to deal with. One had released some news in advance in order to maximize the benefits of this auction item, while the other had directly collected tolls from Heavenly Fate City's space array, causing the various great forces to cry for their mothers and fathers without anyone to complain. Narrowing his eyes, Yang Pei looked around the auction hall and saw only the sounds of discussion. No one from any of the private rooms had any intention to bid, causing him to secretly feel annoyed. Just as he was about to use the cards he had arranged to raise the price of the Dragon Striker Whip, someone suddenly shouted, "Excuse me, for 6 million. This voice came from a B-block private room, and no one knew if he was talking about offending Yin Su Dai or Chu Chang Feng. In any case, before anyone had even started bidding, this man's momentum was already weaker than the others. It was likely that the person in this private room really wanted to bid for the Dragon Striker Whip but felt a little uneasy, so he first spoke up to show weakness so others wouldn't try to settle accounts with him. Sure enough, as soon as this voice came out, Chu Chang Feng's cold snort came from Heaven Battling Union's private room, the threat in his voice obvious. Just now, when Wei Guchang participated in the auction, although Chu Chang Feng was dissatisfied, he couldn't say anything. After all, Shadow Moon Hall's strength wasn't weak and Wei Guchang was bidding for Dong Xian, so it was reasonable. But now a person from a B-block private room had jumped out to question his prestige, naturally causing Chu Chang Feng's anger to erupt. He had clearly said just now that his junior sister Yin liked this Dragon Striker Whip and had politely asked them to be lenient, but now there were so many people who didn't have eyes looking for trouble. Just as Chu Chang Feng was about to say a few words to show off, Yin Su Dai's slightly angry voice rang out from Colored Glass Sect's private room, 5 million. Looking at this situation, Yin Su Dai was determined to win this Dragon Striker Whip. She hadn't bid for the origin-grade low-rank artifact that had appeared before, so it was impossible for her to miss this opportunity. As soon as the price of 5 million was announced, the B-block private room went silent, either because there were no more Saint Crystals to bid or because they were wary of Chu Chang Feng's cold snort. Of course, the latter was more likely. Inside the auction hall, there was another awkward silence. After the price of 5 million was called, no one continued to bid. Inside private room C13, Yang Kai frowned thoughtfully, his expression flickering a few times before he suddenly called out a shocking price, 6 million. Chapter 1162. The auction for the Dragon Striker Whip had always been stable, and although the price was rising steadily, everyone's bids were still reasonable, only increasing by 200,000 or 300,000. However, Yang Kai had suddenly bid 6 million, a full million higher than Yin Su Dai's bid. The audience was once again in an uproar. On the auction stage, the beautiful woman who had presided over the auction before glanced at old Yang Pei suspiciously, thinking that this was some kind of shill arranged by old Yang Pei, but this shill was obviously too obvious. How could she have known that Yang Pei would actually shake his head slowly, meaning that the shill she had arranged was not in that private room, causing the beautiful woman to be stunned. Inside room C13, hearing Yang Kai actually bid a high price of 6 million, Wu Yi and Yang Yang both covered their mouths and stared at him in amazement, not knowing what he was trying to do. 6 million. If this Dragon Striker Whip fell into their hands, wouldn't they have nowhere to cry? Yang Kai's expression remained unchanged, his eyes filled with confidence. He believed that the price of this Dragon Striker Whip was more than 6 million. At the very least, it was more than that on this occasion. Since participating in this auction, Yang Kai had already estimated the value of various artifacts and found that there was a huge difference from his initial estimate. He had thought that the origin-grade low-rank artifacts would only sell for 200,000 or 300,000 saint crystals, but each one had sold for more than 1 million. The twin daggers refined by Yang Yang had sold for a high price of 2.1 million saint crystals. Now that the Dragon Striker Whip was a genuine origin-grade mid-rank artifact, how could it only sell for a few million saint crystals? It was possible for it to sell for 10 million saint crystals. If it weren't for Chu Changfeng's words, there would definitely be countless people bidding for this Dragon Striker Whip, causing its price to skyrocket. However, because of Chu Changfeng's words, there were very few people bidding now, none of them willing to offend Yang Kai and Yin Su Dai of Colored Glass Sect, resulting in an awkward silence. Yang Kai didn't have a good impression of Chu Changfeng, nor did he have the slightest friendship with Yin Su Dai, so of course he wouldn't allow his things to be taken advantage of by strangers. Since no one was willing to bid, Yang Kai had no choice but to bid. At worst, he would buy back the Dragon Striker Whip, but he couldn't allow others to take advantage of it. Mitch, you sure talk big. 6 million, can you take it out? Chu Changfeng's cold voice called out from the private room, apparently feeling that a person from the C-block private room couldn't afford so many saint crystals. What does it have to do with you whether others can take it out or not? If he can't take it out, Treasure Trove Pavilion will naturally make him pay the price. If you want to bid, then bid. So much nonsense, Fang Tianzhong said mockingly. Brother Fang, this has nothing to do with you, right? Why are you talking so much? Chu Changfeng's voice became even colder. Normally, he and Fang Tianzhong were at loggerheads, but at this time, the other party was actually trying to humiliate him, making Chu Changfeng unable to bear it. I just don't like the way some people behave. Juniors, don't be so condescending. If you dare to be so long-winded again, then both of you will be chased out of Treasure Trove Pavilion and never allowed to participate in Treasure Trove Pavilion's auctions again. Yang Pei snorted coldly. Since old Yang Pei had spoken, no one dared to refuse, so Chu Changfeng and Fang Tianzhong quickly apologized. Yang Pei nodded slightly and said loudly, 6 million for room C13. Are there any higher bids? 5 million. Chu Changfeng immediately increased the price. Before Yang Kai could open his mouth though, Fang Tianzhong's voice rang out, 7 million. Without waiting for Chu Changfeng to bid again, Yang Kai ruthlessly shouted, 8 million. Ha ha ha, I can't let you juniors steal the limelight. This old master bids 5 million. Qian Tong's laughter rang out. Yang Kai froze for a moment, thought about it for a moment, smiled slightly, picked up his teacup, took a sip, and leisurely said to Wu Yi and Yang Inflammation, get ready to collect your money, it's about time. Qian Tong had already bid 5 million. He wasn't bidding for the sake of bidding, but rather to draw attention and hatred to himself, immediately increasing the price after Yang Kai made his bid. Qian Tong was a very good person, and this favor was something Yang Kai would accept. Inside the private room of Shadow Moon Hall, Wei Guchang and Dong Xian'er both looked at Qian Tong in confusion, not knowing why he had suddenly participated in the auction. Although they were puzzled, they didn't ask any questions. Qian Tong naturally had his reasons for doing so. The auction of the Dragon Striker Whip was quite dramatic. At the beginning of the auction, not many people dared to ask about this origin-grade mid-rank offensive artifact, but no one could have imagined that at the end, its price would soar, each increase shocking everyone. After Qian Tong bid 5 million, Yin Su Dai immediately followed up with a bid of 9 million, eventually winning the bid. Although the Dragon Striker Whip didn't reach 10 million, this price still shocked countless people. 9 million, how many great forces on Shadowed Star could afford such a price? Inside private room C13, Wu Yi and Yang Yang were both stunned, their faces flushed with excitement as they clenched their fists tightly and stared towards Yang Kai in worship. If it weren't for Yang Kai stirring up trouble at the end, this Dragon Striker Whip would only have sold for 5 million, but now it had sold for nearly double that price. Counting the Origin Condensing Pill and the twin daggers from before, the three of them had reaped a huge harvest from this auction. 10 million high-rank Saint crystals had been obtained so easily. In the past, neither of them had even dared to dream of such a thing. Do you think 10 million is too much? Yang Kai chuckled. 10 million isn't too much. Wu Yi was stunned. Then how much do you want? Just watch, there's something even more terrifying. Yang Kai took a sip of tea as he stared up at the high platform with a slightly excited expression. He could vaguely feel that this final item would fetch a higher price than the Dragon Striker whip. Although he didn't know what kind of final price it would sell for, since Treasure Trove Pavilion had put it up for auction after the Dragon Striker whip, its value was indisputable. On the high platform, Yang Pei lightly coughed and announced, "The next item to be auctioned is the finale." While he was speaking, the beautiful auctioneer from before personally carried a jade plate in front of Yang Pei. Everyone could see that the beautiful auctioneer's delicate body was slightly trembling, and the hand that held the jade plate was also trembling. This scene made the experts in the various private rooms extremely curious. This beautiful auctioneer was a member of the Endless Treasures Pavilion and could be considered as someone who had seen the world and had rich experience. Just what could actually make her so excited? The smile on her pretty face seemed a little stiff. "Everyone, please look." Yang Pei lifted the red cloth covering the jade plate and the final auction item immediately appeared in front of everyone's eyes. This was a transparent bottle that was neither gold nor jade, and it was impossible to tell what material it was made of. This bottle was definitely of great value, but what attracted everyone's attention was not the bottle, but the pill lying quietly inside. This pill was round and full, and there were clear crisscrossing lines on its surface, similar to the meridians of a human body. Pill veins. An origin condensing pill with pill veins. Countless cries of alarm rang out from all directions. At this moment, all the major private rooms were filled with varying degrees of commotion. Some people crushed the chairs they were sitting on, some overturned tables, and some broke teacups. At this moment, the various masters of Shadowed Star could no longer remain calm. They, who had always been able to remain calm even if a mountain collapsed in front of them, were now like country bumpkins who had never seen the world, panicking and making a fool of themselves. The cultivators in the hall were also in an uproar. An origin condensing pill had been auctioned off in the middle of the auction and was bought by Sea Temple's third temple master Jiang Huayan for a price of 1.01 million saint stones. Now that another origin condensing pill had appeared, everyone naturally recognized it. However, this origin condensing pill was clearly different from the previous one. It was an origin condensing pill with pill veins. An origin condensing pill was a Saint King grade high-rank pill and was extremely difficult to refine. Only origin grade low-rank alchemists could refine it, but an origin condensing pill with pill veins was something even origin king grade alchemists could not necessarily refine. At this moment, one had appeared on the auction stage. Asterisk shua shua shua. Asterisk one figure after another flew out from all directions, each of them concealing their auras and their eyes flashing like lightning. These people were all origin returning realm masters of Endless Treasures Pavilion. They flew out and stood on the high platform, surrounding the origin condensing pill with dignified expressions on their faces, as if they would kill anyone who dared to approach. The murderous aura exuding from their bodies was so dense that it was almost tangible, causing the entire auction hall to instantly fall silent. When the masters in the private rooms saw this scene, their emotions gradually calmed down and they slowly took their seats, but their brows were still filled with shock and determination. They finally understood why Yang Pei had sent them a message and told them to go back and collect Saint crystals. It turned out that the real finale of the auction was not the Dragon Striker whip, but this origin condensing pill with pill veins. Such an origin condensing pill was absolutely priceless and worth all of them going bankrupt. Yang Pei looked around and waited for everyone's emotions to calm down and the noisy auction hall to fall silent before proudly declaring, "Did everyone see it clearly? Since everyone has seen it clearly, we won't waste any more time and will now begin the auction for this origin condensing pill. The starting price is 5 million, and each increase must be no less than 500,000. As soon as Yang Pei's voice fell, countless bids rang out from all directions, many times more intense than any of the previous auction items. On top of that, every person who called out a price was full of vigor and momentum. Those big shots all personally participated in the auction. There were too many bids being called out, and almost every private room had someone calling out a price. Yang Pei didn't pay any attention to them and simply turned his eyes to the highest bidder. 6 million, 8 million, 10 million, 15 million, 20 million. In less than 10 breaths of time, the price of this origin condensing pill had already reached 30 million. What's more, the sounds of bidding still did not weaken and were still as intense and fierce as before. Every time the price increased, it was terrifying to the extreme, increasing by the millions. Yang Pei didn't even have time to interrupt, nor did he need to deliberately say anything. All he needed to do was look around and everyone else would automatically increase the price. 35 million, 40 million. The price rose straight up without stopping, then 50 million, 60 million. Chapter 1163. Treasure Trove Pavilion would hold an auction every 2 or 3 years, but there were very few auctions where the competition was as fierce as today's. Many of the cultivator spectators in the hall had their mouths wide open, unable to close them for a long time. The numbers being reported from the private rooms made them feel like they were in a dream, unable to believe what they were seeing. If they hadn't happened to attend this auction, none of them would have known that these great forces had such a powerful heritage. After 60 million, many of the elders in the private rooms sighed sadly and withdrew from the competition. This number was a watershed, enough to make 80% of the great forces on Shadowed Star sigh. Inside Colored Glass Sect's private room, Yin Sudai's pretty face was filled with shock. When someone bid 50 million, Colored Glass Sect had already given up. The middle-aged woman sitting next to Yin Sudai sighed heavily and smiled bitterly. Let's just watch the show. Second, madam, have these people gone crazy? Even if an origin condensing pill with pill veins is valuable, it shouldn't be so expensive, right? Why are they acting so crazily? Yin Sudai turned her head and asked the middle-aged woman. Not only was Yin Sudai asking this question, but all the leading figures of the younger generation in the private rooms were also asking the same question. None of them understood why their elders were spending so much money to bid for an origin condensing pill. An origin condensing pill could only increase the chances of a third-order Saint King cultivator breaking through to the origin returning realm. It wasn't an origin nirvana pill. If it were an origin nirvana pill that could increase a third-order origin returning realm cultivator's breakthrough to the origin king realm, everyone could understand why they were bidding so high, but this was clearly just an origin condensing pill. Fang Tianzhong, Chu Changfeng, Wei Guchang, and Dong Xian'er all looked towards their respective elders, hoping they could solve their doubts. Inside the private room of Shadow Moon Hall, after Qian Tong called out the price of 65 million, he took a moment to say, "Do you think everyone is just bidding for an origin condensing pill? You're wrong. This origin condensing pill has formed pill veins and can definitely allow a third-order Saint King realm cultivator to smoothly break through to the origin returning realm. If this was the extent of its true value, then it wouldn't be too expensive, at most 2 million to 3 million Saint crystals. Its true value is that it is rumored to be able to develop the full potential of a cultivator. Think about it, if it really has such an effect, then after a cultivator takes this origin condensing pill, their future cultivation will be smooth sailing. Perhaps after reaching the third-order origin returning realm, they will be able to break through the shackles of Shadowed Star and break through to the origin king realm." Wei Guchang and Dong Xian'er were both shocked, the former asking in horror, "Elder, do you mean to say that they are not bidding for a pill that can create an origin returning realm master, but for a chance to become an origin king?" "Indeed." Qian Tong nodded seriously. "You juniors don't understand the true value of this pill, so I don't blame you, but us seniors have studied the origin king realm for hundreds of years. Before us, there were many seniors who spent even more time searching for a way to break through to the origin king realm. Taking an origin condensing pill that has formed pill veins is one of the feasible methods. Whether this method can succeed or not, no one knows, but even if there is only a glimmer of hope, we must try to seize it. There was no origin king realm on Shadowed Star, but once an origin king appeared, they could dominate all of Shadowed Star. For this possibility, what was a few million Saint crystals? As long as they could dominate Shadowed Star, these Saint crystals could be taken back at any time. Disciple understands. Wei Guchang nodded lightly. Qian Tong glanced at him and smiled. An origin condensing pill can only be taken by a third-order Saint King cultivator, so we are bidding for it now for the younger disciples of our respective sects. In my Shadow Moon Hall, only you and Xian are qualified to take it, but your aptitude is better than Xian so if you can obtain it, this origin condensing pill will be yours. You don't have to worry about that. Wei Guchang grinned. Disciple doesn't think so. If we can obtain it, either Xian or I can take it. His expression was calm, without the slightest pretense, and after exchanging a glance with Dong Xian, the two of them smiled at each other. Qian Tong nodded with satisfaction. He was very confident about these two disciples of his. He believed that even if this origin condensing pill was sold to him, the two of them would still try to push it out of each other's hands. It was impossible for senior brother and junior sister to become enemies over a single pill. However, whether he could obtain it or not, Qian Tong wasn't sure. There were only 5 forces still bidding right now: Star Emperor Sect, Heaven Battling Union, Thunder Typhoon Sect, Sea Temple, and Shadow Moon Hall. All the other great forces had already lost their qualifications. If it weren't for Qian Tong collecting so many tolls before, Shadow Moon Hall would have withdrawn, but even so, Qian Tong wasn't confident he could obtain it. Now that the price of this origin condensing pill had reached 68 million, he only had 80 million Saint Crystals left, which would soon break through the bottom line he could afford. Qian Tong frowned anxiously as he glanced over at Luo Qing standing next to him, wishing he could beat this bastard up again. Feeling the elder's malicious gaze, Luo Qing couldn't help shrinking his neck. He didn't know how he had offended the elder, but it seemed the elder found him particularly unpleasant today. 70 million. From Heaven Battling Union's private room, a vigorous bid rang out. It should be one of the elders of Heaven Battling Union. In a game of this level, a junior like Chu Chang Feng wasn't qualified to bid. 75 million. Heaven Battling Union's bid was immediately refreshed, and the person from private room A1 followed decisively without the slightest hesitation. Inside private room C13, Yang Kai was secretly shocked. Even though he had been mentally prepared, he was still shocked by this price. Like Wei Guchang, Dong Xian, and the others, he didn't understand why these people were acting so crazily. It was as if they had lost all sense of reason. In his opinion, since Treasure Trove Pavilion had used this origin condensing pill as the final auction item, it would definitely sell for a higher price than the Dragon Striker Whip, but this price was simply too outrageous. He had once again misjudged the value of the item he had taken out. With such a situation occurring, Yang Kai felt that it wasn't his fault and that there was something else he didn't understand. How could he have known that the cultivator on Shadowed Star would actually use an origin condensing pill that had formed pill veins to develop the potential of a cultivator in order to reach the Origin King realm? At this moment, Yang Kai was secretly rejoicing that he hadn't refined both origin condensing pills with pill veins. At that time, in order to participate in the auction, he had deliberately refined an ordinary origin condensing pill and one with pill veins. His original intention was just to get some Saint Crystals for Yang Yang to buy the materials he needed to arrange the spirit array, but in the end, he had obtained a shocking amount of money. Yang Kai, don't tell us this origin condensing pill was also auctioned by you. Wu Yi bit her red lip lightly as she turned to Yang Kai and asked in a low voice. Ha ha. Yang Kai laughed dryly, not knowing what to say. Wu Yi and Yang Yang both covered their mouths, their beautiful eyes filled with surprise and shock. Compared with the price of this origin condensing pill, the 10 million or so Saint Crystals they had obtained before was nothing. The bidding continued, and Yang Pei's black face showed a rare blush as he stood on the high platform and smiled. Only 5 forces were bidding, each of them exerting their full strength. After the price reached 80 million, Sea Temple and Shadow Moon Hall had no choice but to withdraw one after another, deep sighs coming from their private rooms. Such a price had exceeded their bottom line. After these 2 forces withdrew, only Star Emperor Sect, Heaven Battling Union, and Thunder Typhoon Sect remained. Almost everyone's eyes were focused on the 3 private rooms they had been assigned. Every time they increased the price, the people from Heaven Battling Union and Thunder Typhoon Sect would hesitate for a long time before bidding again. On the other hand, the A1 private room belonging to Star Emperor Sect increased the price as decisively as ever, demonstrating their boldness and wealth. Yang Kai had noticed this private room a long time ago. From beginning to end, It seemed they had only purchased some origin-grade artifacts and pills. After asking Wu Yi, Yang Kai learned that this was Star Emperor Sect's private room. Moreover, according to Wu Yi, although Star Emperor Sect was one of the top great forces on Shadowed Star, its people rarely appeared outside. It seemed that there weren't many people in Star Emperor Sect, most of them in retreat on Star Emperor Mountain. The reason for this name was that the founders of Star Emperor Sect had obtained some of the Star Emperor's inheritances, and all of them claimed to be the Star Emperor's disciples. Under normal circumstances, Star Emperor Sect would not have any conflicts with other great forces and could be considered a relatively peaceful sect. However, no one dared to underestimate them because it was rumored that they had many top masters at the Third Order Origin returning realm. After another stick of incense worth of time, the price of the Origin condensing pill rose to 90 million Saint crystals, the price quoted by Thunder Typhoon Sect. 100 million. The A1 private room directly raised the price by 10 million, showing great determination and courage. Inside Thunder Typhoon Sect's private room, the master who bid smiled bitterly, knowing that even if he increased the price again, Star Emperor Sect would still compete, so he could only loudly announce, Thunder Typhoon Sect withdraws from the competition. As soon as he finished speaking, Heaven Battling Union also announced their withdrawal from the competition. Spending 100 million Saint crystals to buy a chance to break through to the Origin King realm, and even if it succeeded, it would be at least a few hundred years later. Who knew what would happen in a few hundred years? Perhaps some other more effective method would be found. After weighing the pros and cons, Thunder Typhoon Sect and Heaven Battling Union naturally decided not to bid again. Yang Pei also knew that no one was richer than Star Emperor Sect, so he stepped forward and quickly shouted 3 times. The entire auction ended with Star Emperor Sect's final victory. Congratulations to Star Emperor Sect for winning. The finale of the auction rang out one after another from the private rooms. Naturally, people from Treasure Trove Pavilion went to Star Emperor Sect's private room to hand over the goods. Yang Pei stood on the high platform and announced the perfect end of the auction, once again thanking all the great forces for coming, winning him a round of applause and greetings. The people in the auction hall got up and left one after another, and the masters in the private rooms also left one after another. Yang Kai's group of 3 didn't move. Chen Tong had said before that they shouldn't rush to leave after the auction was over, as he still had something to say. Yang Kai also happened to be looking for Chen Tong, so he naturally stayed behind. Chapter 1164. Inside the private room of Shadow Moon Hall, Chen Tong remained motionless for a long time, a faint look of annoyance appearing on his face. If he had known that even after receiving 30 million spirit stones, he still wouldn't have been able to obtain the Origin condensing pill, Chen Tong would have definitely bought the Dragon Striker whip for his disciple. Now that he had obtained nothing, he naturally felt some regret. After waiting for a stick of incense worth of time, Chen Tong turned to the Shadow Moon Hall disciples standing nearby and said, "You can go back first, the Liu Yang Sandfield will open soon. After you go back, make sure to cultivate well." The disciples nodded and left, leaving only Wei Guchang behind. Chen Tong got up and said, "You too, come with me, I'll take you to see someone." Yes, Wei Guchang and Dong Shena obediently followed behind him. Inside private room C13, Wu Yi took out some Saint crystals and gave them to the 2 female Shadow Moon Hall disciples who had been waiting nearby, sending them away under their joyful thanks. The 3 of them waited for a long time, but Chen Tong didn't arrive. Just as they were feeling bored, they suddenly heard a knock on the door. Yang Kai signaled to Wu Yi and she immediately ran over to open the door. Chen Tong walked in with a smile on his face, a young man and a young woman behind him. "Nephew Yang, I've kept you waiting." Chen Tong cupped his fists and politely greeted. "Senior is too polite, Junior has nothing to do anyway." Yang Kai got up and greeted him. Hearing Yang Kai's change in address, Chen Tong's eyes lit up and his smile became wider. Before, Yang Kai had always called him Elder Chen, but now he had become senior, obviously with a trace of respect. How could Chen Tong not understand that it was because of his help this time that Yang Kai was somewhat grateful to him? He didn't point it out and sat down at Yang Kai's invitation. Wei Guchang and Dong Shena, who had been following behind Chen Tong, wore strange expressions on their faces. Originally, when Qian Tong said he was taking them to see someone, they thought they were going to meet an elder of some family, but when they arrived, they discovered that the person they were going to meet was actually a young man who was younger than them and whose strength wasn't too high, only a first-order Saint King. What did such a person have to be treated so seriously by the elders? The two of them had followed Qian Tong for a long time. From Qian Tong's words and demeanor, they could even sense a hint of caution. He was definitely not someone from the three top forces. Where did this guy come from? These two are. Yang Kai looked at Wei Guchang and Dong Shena suspiciously. Although he had already guessed their identities, it was better to pretend that he didn't know. Why did Qian Tong bring them here? However, Yang Kai only pondered for a moment before he immediately understood Qian Tong's intentions. Qian Tong also seemed to have just remembered and chuckled. I forgot to introduce them to nephew. Pointing to the handsome man, he said, "This is my Shadow Moon Hall's most talented disciple in several hundred years, Wei Guchang." Then, he pointed to the woman and said, "This is this old master's inferior disciple, Dong Shena. You too, quickly greet brother Yang Kai." When Wei Guchang and Dong Shena heard Qian Tong's introduction, they were secretly shocked. It had always been the juniors who bowed to their seniors. Among those of the same generation, the order of greeting was based on their cultivation and status. This guy named Yang Kai was a nobody and his cultivation was much lower than the two of them. Why did the elder want them to greet him first? Thinking so, the two of them were stunned for a moment. For the first time, they didn't act according to Qian Tong's instructions. Seeing this, how could Qian Tong not know what they were puzzled about? Although these two disciples had good temperaments and didn't have the bad attitudes of disciples from other great forces, they also had their own pride. It could be said that even if Fang Tianzhong and Chu Changfeng were standing here, they weren't qualified to make these two lower their statuses. After all, these people were all peers. Qian Tong was secretly anxious, fearing that the two's attitude would displease Yang Kai. If Yang Kai was displeased, all his previous efforts would be in vain. Qian Tong was also annoyed. If he had known earlier, he would have made things clear to them before coming here and wouldn't have made things so awkward. Yang Kai, however, didn't care and just chuckled and cupped his fists. "So it is brother Wei. I have long heard of your great name." He had only heard of Wei Guchang's name today, so although he didn't mean what he said, Qian Tong still had to give face. Wei Guchang gently nodded and also cupped his fists, but didn't say anything. Yang Kai then turned to Dong Shena and said, "Greetings, Dong Shena." Dong Shena gracefully returned the gesture and, like Wei Guchang, didn't say anything. Qian Tong laughed and said, "This Qian is old, but you are about the same age. In the future, you should get to know each other better." Yang Kai didn't say anything. Wei Guchang and Dong Shena also didn't say anything. They didn't feel that there was a need for them to get close to Yang Kai. Although the elder seemed to think highly of this person, only the strong could win their respect. If it was only because of status, no matter how high one's birth was, it wasn't worth it for them to bow and bend their knees. Qian Tong also seemed to feel that he didn't handle this matter well. Originally, he brought Wei Guchang and Dong Shena to find Yang Kai because he felt that they were about the same age and it would be easy to make friends with them. As long as they made friends with Yang Kai, they wouldn't have to worry about not getting benefits in the future. However, he found that he had underestimated the arrogance of his two disciples. Immediately, his interest waned and he had them wait outside. Wei Guchang and Dong Shena bowed and left, as if they had come here just to see Yang Kai. After they left, Qian Tong smiled bitterly and said, "We've shown nephew Yang a disgrace. This old master has failed to discipline his disciples properly." Yang Kai shook his head. "Today, I also saw a lot of Shadowed Star's young talents. To be honest, these two gave me a better impression than the others." There was no need to mention Chu Changfeng. Yang Kai hated this kind of person. When Fang Tianzhong confronted Chu Changfeng in front of Treasure Trove Pavilion, he didn't care about others at all. If it weren't for Yang Kai's strength, he would have made a fool of himself on the spot, causing Yang Kai to have a bad impression of him. Yin Su Dai also didn't look like a good woman. Although she was young, she was quite tactful. At the very least, Wei Guchang and Dong Shena didn't have the shortcomings of these people. Their temperaments were also relatively straightforward, otherwise, Chen Tong wouldn't have been so embarrassed. Of course, Yang Kai was just comforting Chen Tong. It was impossible for him to take the initiative to make friends with these two. These two had their own pride, but so did Yang Kai. No one was perfect. Sure enough, Yang Kai's words completely relieved Chen Tong and he began chatting with Yang Kai with a smile on his face. After chatting for a while, Yang Kai said, "Senior, before the auction began, Senior said he had something to discuss with me." "What is it?" Hearing this, Chen Tong's expression became solemn as he asked, "Has nephew Yang heard of Liu Yang Sandfield?" Yang Kai glanced at him in surprise, wondering if the matter he wanted to discuss with him was the same one he wanted to discuss with him. Nodding gently, Yang Kai replied, "I've heard of it and know about its strangeness." "Good." Chen Tong took a sip of tea before continuing to ask, "I wonder if nephew Yang would like to go to the Liu Yang Sandfield?" What does senior mean? Although Yang Kai wanted to go there, he didn't want to immediately express his intentions. He didn't know why Chen Tong had specifically come to him to discuss this. "Nephew Yang, please don't misunderstand." Chen Tong smiled. "Originally, this old master wouldn't recommend you to go to a place like the Liu Yang Sandfield. After all, it is too dangerous. Every time someone enters it, they suffer heavy losses. 60% of those who come out alive are already very good, but I heard that nephew Yang once killed a third-order Saint King cultivator." "Is that true?" Indeed. Although Chen Tong had heard about this from Luo Qing, hearing Yang Kai admit it himself still surprised him. He immediately understood that Yang Kai's combat strength was also very good, otherwise, it would have been impossible for him to kill a cultivator above his own realm. If that's the case, nephew Yang is qualified to go there. I just don't know if you want to go, but if you do, this old master can arrange for you to enter. Yang Kai frowned. Are there any restrictions on entering that place? He thought that once the Liu Yang Sandfield opened, all he needed to do was find a place to enter, so he wanted to ask Chen Tong about its location and opening time. Naturally there are restrictions. Chen Tong looked at him in surprise. "You don't think that place is open to everyone, do you?" "I only know that it can only be entered at special times." Chen Tong laughed. "It seems that nephew Yang doesn't know much about the Liu Yang Sandfield. Please enlighten me, senior." Yang Kai immediately asked for guidance. "The Liu Yang Sandfield can only be entered at special times, but not everyone can go there. First, origin returning realm cultivators cannot enter. If they enter, they will die without a doubt," Chen Tong said seriously. "Why?" Yang Kai was shocked. "Because of Shi. Shi is a power unique to an origin returning realm cultivator, but the Liu Yang Sandfield doesn't seem to allow Shi to exist. Once an origin returning realm cultivator enters, whether they use their Shi or not, they will immediately be burned to death." Yang Kai's face paled as he secretly rejoiced. Fortunately, he hadn't been able to use Shi during his retreat some time ago, otherwise, he would have missed this opportunity. It seemed that there were gains and losses in everything. To the side, Wu Yi and Yang Yang were dumbfounded. Obviously, they didn't know about this either. This was discovered by the seniors on Shadowed Star at the cost of many lives. Chen Tong sighed slightly. Moreover, the Liu Yang Sandfield is useless to those with low strength. When it is open, the power of the heat is indeed reduced greatly, but it is still not something a Saint Realm cultivator can resist. That's why all those who go to the Liu Yang Sandfield are Saint Kings. Nephew Yang is only a first-order Saint King. If this old master didn't know you could fight those above your realm, he wouldn't have dared mention this matter to you. Of course, whether you want to go or not is up to you. I want to go. Such a rare opportunity, wouldn't it be a great loss if I didn't go? Yang Kai grinned. That place was an excellent place to refine the profound yin sunflower water. Chen Tong looked at him approvingly. I knew nephew Yang wasn't a mediocre person. Since you've decided to go, take one of my Shadow Moon Hall's spots. In any case, my Shadow Moon Hall doesn't lack spots. Chapter 1165. Quota. Yang Kai frowned, turning to Chen Tong and asking, "Is there a limit to the number of people who can enter the Liu Yang Sandfield?" "That's what this old master wanted to tell you." Chen Tong nodded. In fact, when the Liu Yang Sandfield first opened, There was no limit to the number of people who could enter, but as you know, Shadowed Star is short on cultivation resources. The higher the quality of the things, the fewer there are. The Liu Yang Sandfield is one of the 3 great restricted zones, so naturally, there are many good things inside. All the great forces are coveting that place, so a problem arises. A long time ago, when the Liu Yang Sandfield opened, all the Saint King Realm cultivators who were qualified to enter entered at once. With so many people entering, everyone's harvest became smaller and smaller, so the next time the Liu Yang Sandfield opened, no one would be able to obtain anything. Excessive mining can indeed cause such a problem. Yang Kai nodded. What Nephew Yang says is correct, so the great forces on Shadowed Star joined forces to set some restrictions on the Liu Yang Sandfield. That is, each force cannot send too many people into the sand field. For example, Star Emperor Sect, Heaven Battling Union, and Thunder Typhoon Sect are allowed to send 60 people into the sand field, while lesser forces such as my Shadow Moon Hall are allowed to send 50 people in. Even smaller forces can only send 2 or 3 people into the sand field. On the one hand, this is to reduce the loss of Saint King Realm cultivators on Shadowed Star, and on the other hand, to maintain the number of precious treasures in the Liu Yang sand field. After thousands of years of the flowing time Great Emperor, all the great forces have been very conscientious. Every time the Liu Yang Sandfield opens, they will select people according to this quota, so there is a limit to the number of people who can enter. Yang Kai nodded lightly, indicating he understood. Qian Tong continued, even so, every time the Liu Yang Sandfield opens, no less than 10,000 people enter. However, the Liu Yang Desert is very big. No one knows how big it is, so even if 10,000 people enter it, it won't matter. At this point, Yang Kai immediately understood what Qian Tong meant. If he wanted to enter, he would have to use one of the slots in the Shadow Moon Hall. However, the Shadow Moon Hall could accommodate 50 people, so one slot was not a problem. Moreover, if you want to enter the Liu Yang Sandfield, you can't go anywhere. You have to go through some special places. The forbidden area of the Liu Yang Sandfield is very strange. We once suspected that it was a huge formation set up by a powerful person in antiquity times, but we couldn't find a way to break it. When the power of its heat weakens, there will be some weak links similar to the formation door in different places. Those who enter must go through these weak links to enter the Liu Yang sand field. Otherwise, they can't enter. Yang Kai heard what Qian Tong said and immediately understood that he had underestimated the problem. Entering the Liu Yang sand field required a slot, and it had to be done at a special time and through a special place. It was not like what he thought before, that once the Liu Yang sand field opened, he could enter at will. Thinking of this, Yang Kai hurriedly said, "Senior, I want to enter the Liu Yang sand field. I will have to trouble you." Qian Tong laughed. "Nephew Yang is too polite. If I had treated you as an outsider, this old master would not have said so much to you today, but since you intend to enter this place, leave the rest to this old master. I will make sure you are satisfied." He was afraid that Yang Kai would not ask him for help. Although Qian Tong felt that he had confided in Yang Kai and sincerely wanted to make friends with him, he was afraid that Yang Kai would not appreciate it. After all, young people were proud and arrogant. It was normal that they did not care about old men like him. Now that Yang Kai wanted to ask him for help, he was naturally happy. Changing the topic, Qian Tong said, "But nephew, if you want to enter, you have to be fully prepared." "What do I need to prepare?" Yang Kai asked modestly. "You must refine some secret treasures that can resist the heat. If you don't have a suitable secret treasure, I can provide you with some ice monster beast body materials. Secret treasures refined from these materials are most suitable for use in the Liu Yang sand field. I have also prepared a lot of materials, so you don't have to worry about not having enough." Yang Kai was about to refuse, but suddenly his heart moved. He thoughtfully asked, "Brother Wei and Miss Dong are also going to the Liu Yang sand field, right?" Qian Tong nodded, "Of course. Although that place is dangerous, they are the two most outstanding disciples of Shadow Moon Hall. How can they grow without experiencing some hardships? Then the secret treasures they have," Qian Tong smiled awkwardly, "I have purchased a few, but most of them are Saint King grade high rank. I don't know how useful they will be." My Shadow Moon Hall originally had an origin-grade artifact refiner, but he is too old to perform artifact refining. Yang Kai raised his brow. If Senior is not worried, you might as well give the Ice Monster Beast body materials to me. In a few days, I will give them 2 origin-grade secret treasures to protect themselves. Chen Tong had already determined that there was an origin-grade artifact refiner behind him, so Yang Kai didn't need to hide it. Moreover, he had deliberately said that he had collected a lot of materials, obviously intending to ask his imaginary master to refine them. Chen Tong had helped him a lot these days, providing him with a spot to enter the Liu Yang sandfield and all kinds of information, so Yang Kai didn't mind returning the favor. If others respect him, he would respect him tenfold. Sure enough, seeing that Yang Kai was so thoughtful, Chen Tong was overjoyed and nodded repeatedly. Rest assured, this old master can rest assured. Ha, then I'll have to trouble nephew Yang. Just now, he had been thinking about what to do if Yang Kai couldn't understand the meaning behind his words. For the future of Shadow Moon Hall, he could only put down his old face and ask for help directly. He hadn't expected that just by saying a few words in a roundabout way, Yang Kai would actually understand. Saying so, Chen Tong directly took out a space ring and handed it to Yang Kai. He had already prepared the materials and was just waiting for this moment to come. Moreover, he had deliberately brought Wei Guchang and Dong Shena here. On the one hand, he wanted to let them meet Yang Kai, and on the other hand, he wanted to take this opportunity to ask Yang Kai to help him refine the secret treasures. Unfortunately, those two didn't have good eyesight and wasted Chen Tong's painstaking efforts. Yang Kai took the space ring and glanced through it casually, quickly discovering a large number of monster beast materials exuding a cold aura. Judging from the richness of this aura, it was definitely a 9th-order monster beast. Even the monster beast's monster core was inside. Shadowed Star didn't lack alchemy and artifact refining raw materials, what it lacked was high-grade alchemists and artifact refiners. With so many materials, it was enough to refine 4 or 5 secret treasures. Nephew Yang, I'll leave this matter to you. This old master is very grateful. Senior has helped me a lot, so there's no need to be so polite. If there's anything you need in the future, just let me know. Chen Tong nodded repeatedly. Although Yang Kai was just being polite, he felt very comfortable listening to him. By the way, Senior, when will the Liu Yang sandfield open? Yang Kai asked. Chen Tong hesitated for a moment before replying, this kind of thing is hard to say. It may take 1 or 2 months, maybe 3 or 4 months, depending on when the power of the heat weakens. However, you can rest assured, the Liu Yang sandfield is surrounded by masters from various great forces who are constantly monitoring it. Once it opens, we'll receive news and it won't be too late to set off. You should take advantage of this time to recover your strength. Once I receive news, I'll inform you immediately. Saying so, Chen Tong handed a communication artifact to Yang Kai. Yang Kai took it and threw it into his space ring. At that moment, there was a knock on the door again. Wu Yi walked over and opened the door, only to see Luo Qing walk in with a cautious expression on his face. Chen Tong smiled and said, it must be that old dog Yang Pei who asked Luo Qing to deliver the Saint Crystals. Yang Kai's spirit shook while Wu Yi and Yang Yang's beautiful eyes also lit up. At the auction, Yang Kai had sent 4 items to Chen Tong, each of which had sold for a high price. It wasn't until now that the total amount of Saint Crystals had been settled. Yang Kai had been waiting here not only to wait for Chen Tong, but also to wait for his earnings. Thinking about the hundreds of millions of Saint Crystals, even Yang Kai couldn't suppress the excitement in his heart. Luo Qing stepped forward and respectfully placed a space ring on the table before saying, Manager Yang said that there should be 165.045 million Saint Crystals, but because of the huge amount of Saint Crystals being auctioned, the total amount is 107 million Saint Crystals. Brother Yang, please count them. 107 million. Yang Kai frowned. This number was somewhat wrong. Chen Tong thought about it for a moment before explaining with a smile, Treasure Trove Pavilion's auctions charge a processing fee of 10% of the auction proceeds, which is to say, out of 100 million Saint Crystals, they will take 10 million. Too greedy. Wu Yi and Yang Yang exclaimed in unison. 10 million saint crystals gone just like that, causing them to feel distressed. Qian Tong continued, however, Yang Pei seems to have only taken half of it this time. At least he still has a bit of conscience and probably wants to cooperate with you more in the future. Yang Kai smiled and shook his head. There won't be such good things in the future. That origin condensing pill was obtained by Master by chance and is the only one of its kind. However, Senior, why are they so frantically competing for that origin condensing pill with pill veins? Seeing the puzzled look on Yang Kai's face, Qian Tong laughed and said, Jiyu Chang and Xian Er also asked this old master this question before. After explaining the reason, Yang Kai understood that it wasn't that these people were crazy, but rather that they were too obsessed with the pursuit of the origin king realm, so they didn't care how many saint crystals they had to pay. After knowing this, Yang Kai's heart settled. An origin condensing pill with pill veins was something he could refine at any time with his alchemy skills, but he was currently missing one of the main ingredients to refine this origin condensing pill. There were countless precious treasures in his black book space, thousands of origin grade herbs, and 200 to 300 origin king grade herbs, but only 2 stalks of emerald silk grass, which were necessary to refine the origin condensing pill, had been used up. So, before he obtained the emerald silk grass, Yang Kai couldn't refine an origin condensing pill, so naturally, he wouldn't have a chance to cooperate with Treasure Trove Pavilion. What's more, now that he had over 100 million saint crystals, he didn't need to sell anything. Even Shadow Moon Hall couldn't take out 100 million saint crystals. Chapter 1166. With saint crystals, he naturally needed to buy things. Yang made a long list and ordered a large number of materials from Shadow Moon Hall. Qian Tong took a look at the list and was shocked. Each of these materials was extremely precious, and the quantity was huge. If he wanted to buy all of them, it would cost at least 40 to 50 million saint crystals. Qian Tong wasn't worried about the saint crystals. After all, Yang Kai had just made more than 100 million saint crystals. He was just wondering why Yang Kai wanted to buy so many raw materials. Although he was puzzled, he didn't ask any questions and simply nodded. Shadow Moon Hall can't gather all these materials, but Nephew Yang can rest assured. This old master will contact the forces with which my Shadow Moon Hall has a good relationship and will definitely gather all these materials and send them to you within half a month. Then I'll have to trouble Senior. Yang Kai cupped his fists. Having said what needed to be said, Qian Tong told Yang Kai to go back and wait for news from Liu Yang about the opening of the sandfield. Yang Kai immediately took his leave. Qian Tong personally escorted Yang Kai out of Treasure Trove Pavilion before handing the list to Luo Qing. Quickly gather all the materials we can find. If it's not enough, contact the surrounding forces. As long as we don't lose money, we'll be fine. Yes. Luo Qing immediately left. Only then did Wei Guchang and Dong Xian'er come over. Seeing the excited look on Qian Tong's face, Dong Xian'er asked softly, Master, is that person amazing? Why do you think so highly of him? Amazing. Qian Tong nodded heavily before glancing at his 2 disciples and sighing, don't underestimate him. He is a first-order Saint King, but he can kill a third-order Saint King cultivator. Wei Guchang's eyes flashed as a look of surprise appeared on his face, but he quickly calmed down. Because when he was a first-order Saint King, he could also kill ordinary third-order Saint Kings, so he didn't think this was anything special. From the looks of it, he does have some skills. Dong Xian'er pondered for a moment before pursing her lips into a smile. But even so, it's not worth it for Master to personally befriend him. Could it be that Master intends to absorb him into the Shadow Moon Hall? Absorb him into the Shadow Moon Hall? Qian Tong laughed and said self-deprecatingly, I'm just afraid that he won't take a liking to him. It can't be, right? Although my Shadow Moon Hall can't compare to the Star Emperor sect and the other 2 peak powers, it's not weak either. Dong Xian'er exclaimed. Do you know who's behind him? What's his background? Qian Tong shook his head slowly. If you knew, you wouldn't look down on him. Elder, can you explain it in detail? I'm suddenly very interested in him. Wei Jiu Chang grinned. A person who could be favored by an elder like this was definitely not a simple character. Let's talk as we walk. Qian Tong beckoned to the 2 of them. After all, they were still in Endless Treasures Pavilion, so it wasn't appropriate to talk about such things while standing in front of their door. As the three of them walked towards the largest palace in Heavenly Fate City, Qian Tong asked, "Guess who put up the Dragon Striker Whip and the Origin Condensing Pill for auction today?" Dong Xiena was slightly surprised. "Master, you mean, it was him who put them up?" Qian Tong nodded slightly. "The Origin Condensing Pill is fine. Although it is rare and precious, I'm afraid there's only one of it in the world. It should have been obtained from somewhere and it's impossible for a second one to appear, but the Dragon Striker Whip was refined by his master." "What?" Wei Guchang was also shocked. "Doesn't that mean that person's master is an Origin grade mid-rank artifact refiner? When did our Shadowed Star produce such a master? That's the biggest reason why I want to befriend him. Shadowed Star really doesn't have such an artifact refining grandmaster, but he came from the outside." The outside. Wei Guchang and Dong Xiena looked at each other, a look of yearning flashing across their eyes. Yes, he came from the outside. Shadowed Star can almost be said to be isolated from the outside world, and the nearest cultivation star is far from us. The level of artifact refining on Shadowed Star is not enough for us to refine luxurious starships that can pass through the vast star territory and resist all kinds of dangers, so we don't know how wonderful the outside world is. We only know that there are Origin King Realm Masters, Origin King Grade Alchemists, and artifact refiners out there, all of which are outside our territory. If we can't go to the outside world, how did he come here? Dong Xiena asked suspiciously. It was just a coincidence. Qian Tong smiled. When I first met him, this old master didn't dare inquire about him for fear of offending him, but some time ago, I specifically asked Luo Qing to collect some information about him and found that he was brought back from the starfield by a starship belonging to the Haiku family. At that time, he was the only one brought back, and he admitted that he came from a place called Rainfall Star. This old master has heard of Rainfall Star and there is indeed such a cultivation star. Since he was the only one brought back, why did Master say that there was an Origin grade mid-rank artifact refiner behind him? I don't know what the intentions of the person behind him are, but that person must have been secretly protecting him because when the Haiku family starship was about to return to Shadowed Star, it was attacked by a large group of black rock beasts. At that time, the Haiku family starship was in imminent danger and was on the verge of being destroyed, but at the most critical moment, a golden spear suddenly appeared and swept through the black rock beasts, saving all of them. Afterwards, the Haiku family disciples didn't even know who had saved them because that person never showed up. Qian Tong said unhurriedly, "This information was obtained by Luo Qing and was witnessed by many of the Haiku family disciples, so this old master is certain that there was someone protecting Yang Kai from behind at that time, and that person should be his master." It had to be said that Qian Tong's inference was reasonable. Anyone who obtained this information and combined it with the various high-grade artifacts Yang Kai sold would have come to the same conclusion. However, he had underestimated Yang Kai's strength and also underestimated Yang Yang's strength. Qian Tong believed that the existence of his master was reasonable. No wonder, if he had come from the outside, then he may have been an Origin grade mid-rank artifact refiner. Wei Guchang gently nodded. "You are all people who know what's important. I'm telling you all this today not to discourage you, but to let you know the advantages of others. I'm telling you not to underestimate anyone. It's enough that these words come out of my mouth and enter your ears. There's no need to let others know." Disciple understands. Both of them nodded heavily. Moreover, this old master suspects that Yang Kai's master is not just an Origin grade mid-rank artifact refiner, but no matter what, as long as we don't have any malicious intent towards him, it's fine. He has also promised to refine an Origin grade artifact for each of you to protect yourselves. This time, when you go to Liu Yang Sandfield, he will also be there. You will have plenty of time to get familiar with each other, so don't neglect him. Disciple will remember. Wei Guchang and Dong Xiena both nodded in unison, both of them feeling some regret in their hearts. When their master had asked them to enter the private room just now, the two of them really shouldn't have acted so arrogantly. They also secretly decided that after Liu Yang Sandfield opened, they would get along well with Yang Kai. In front of Dragon Cave Mountains Cave, Yang Kai wrapped himself in his star shuttle and landed. Wu Yi and Yang Yang both looked at him strangely. When he returned, the two women had been staring at him like this, causing Yang Kai to feel confused. What do you want to ask? Yang Kai frowned. Do you really have a master? Wu Yi couldn't hold back her curiosity. Why do you ask? You asked me before what kind of pills were valuable, and I said origin condensing pills and origin nirvana pills. Then you took out 2 origin condensing pills. Did your master give them to you? Yang Kai laughed. What do you think? I don't know. Wu Yi shook her head honestly. If I had a master, wouldn't you be able to see it? Then the origin condensing pills. If I said I refined them myself, would you believe me? The two women shook their heads together. Even if they didn't believe him, Yang Kai finally understood why Yang Yang had gone around announcing that he was an origin-grade artifact refiner, but no one believed him. It was the same reason as the current situation. Not wanting to dwell on this issue any longer, Yang Kai tossed the space ring Qian Tong had given him before to Yang Yang. Refine 2 defensive artifacts. They don't need to be too powerful, just origin-grade low rank will do. I understand, Yang Kai nodded. Refining 2 origin-grade low-rank defensive artifacts wasn't a problem for her, especially now that she had the help of the stone mongoose. The speed at which she could refine artifacts was countless times faster than before. The most time-consuming part of refining artifacts was the tempering of materials. Refining them over and over again was not only a waste of time but also a great deal of energy, but the stone mongoose could complete this process in a very short time. No wonder Yang Yang said that the stone mongoose was the best assistant to an artifact refiner. In the past, it would have taken Yang Yang 1 to 2 months to refine an origin-grade artifact, but now it only took her 3 or 4 days. The difference between the two was like the difference between heaven and earth. I'm going to enter retreat to prepare for entering Liu Yang sand field. Pay attention to things here. Yang Kai ordered before diving into the cave and entering his stone room, closing the stone door and entering secluded retreat. The time when Liu Yang sand field would open was uncertain, but it would be at least 1 to 2 months before it opened. Yang Kai needed to use this time to improve his combat effectiveness. In terms of artifacts, he needed to nurture the Purple Shield and 100 Mountains picture as soon as possible. Both artifacts had already been refined, so all he needed to do was make them more compatible with him and he would be able to use them in battle. As for pills, Yang Kai was preparing to refine 1 or 2 bottles of snow and ice pills. The snow and ice pills that appeared at the auction were origin-grade low rank, and were the only pills Yang Kai could refine at this stage, so he wasn't lacking in materials. As for other things like healing pills, Yang Kai already had a lot of them, so there was no need for him to refine them. On top of that, he had great confidence in his body's restorative abilities. If he really couldn't handle it, he could just explode a drop of golden blood. With the enormous vitality contained in his golden blood, as long as his foundation wasn't damaged, he should be able to recover. What remained was the most important thing. Yang Kai wanted to improve the power of his space blade as soon as possible. Chapter 1167. The space blade was a direct manifestation of space force and was an attack method that only Yang Kai could use. It was extremely mysterious and impossible to guard against. Once he could use this method at will, he would have another trump card to protect his life and deal with his enemies. He had never been to the Liu Yang desert before and did not know much about it, but from Qian Tong's introduction, it was likely to be extremely dangerous. Yang Kai did not dare to be careless and could only make the most comprehensive preparations. Sitting down cross-legged, Yang Kai first took out the profound insect stone he had obtained at the auction. Yang Yang had said that this stone contained a very strange energy. It could not be absorbed by a cultivator, nor could it be used for artifact refining. It could only be used to cultivate some exotic insects, and the soul-devouring insects were one of those exotic insects. At the auction, it was because of the abnormal reaction of the soul-devouring insects that Yang Kai had bought this profound insect stone. Otherwise, he would have missed out on it. As soon as the profound insect stone was taken out, Yang Kai felt the soul-devouring insects on the 6-colored island in his knowledge sea become restless, as if they wanted to fly out of his knowledge sea and rush into the profound insect stone. However, without Yang Kai's permission, they could not leave the island no matter what, causing them to become even more excited. Yang Kai did not stop them and instead released the defenses of his knowledge sea, using his divine sense to sweep up the countless soul-devouring insects and pour them into the profound insect stone. As soon as the soul-devouring insects entered the profound insect stone, they immediately became extremely violent, as if they had been injected with chicken blood, each of them exuding a strange aura. Yang Kai listened carefully and seemed to hear a rustling sound, like silkworms eating mulberry leaves. Using his divine sense, Yang Kai discovered that the soul-devouring insects had once again begun to devour each other, setting off a frenzy of internal strife within the profound insect stone. At this moment, the weak soul-devouring insects had no right to live at all. They were instantly wiped out by their stronger counterparts. After cleaning up their weaker companions, the stronger soul-devouring insects also began to conquer and devour each other. The number of soul-devouring insects rapidly decreased. Yang Kai was overjoyed. The last time the soul-devouring insects devoured each other was a long time ago, but after that incident, the soul-devouring insects' power had obviously increased a lot. This time, the same thing happened again. Yang Kai was sure that once they stabilized, their power would definitely increase again. He was looking forward to it. If his soul-devouring insects could evolve to the point where even origin-returning realm masters were unable to resist them, Yang Kai would be invincible on Shadowed Star. At that time, there would be no need for Yang Yang to continue arranging the spirit array. With just his soul-devouring insects alone, no one would dare offend him. After observing for a while, Yang Kai found that the soul-devouring insects were still going to attack each other for a long time, so he didn't waste any more time on it. He directly put the nightmare stone in a corner and let them evolve on their own. Taking out some spirit grasses and spirit herbs, Yang Kai took out his alchemy furnace and began to refine the ice and snow pills. Refining origin-grade low-rank pills was not difficult for him now. In just over a day, Yang Kai had refined 2 bottles of 20 ice and snow pills, 7 of which had formed pill veins. After doing all this, Yang Kai began to enter retreat to nourish his artifacts and cultivate his space force. Time flew by, and soon, 3 months had passed. Inside the stone room, Yang Kai closed his eyes and concentrated, holding a piece of space spirit crystal in his left hand as he constantly used his space force to absorb its energy. His other hand seemed to be waving unconsciously, and every time he did so, a blade-like crack would appear in space. As soon as this crack appeared, it would shoot out in all directions. The entire stone room was a mess, with traces left behind by Yang Kai's space blade. After entering retreat for 3 months, Yang Kai's space blade was undoubtedly much more powerful than when it was first formed. Whether it was in terms of speed or stability, it was incomparable to when it was first formed. The space blade's lethality lay mainly in its speed and stability, especially the latter. Unlike other offensive methods, where the more Saint Chi used, the more destructive it would be. Its main lethality had nothing to do with the amount of Saint Chi used, but rather its ability to devour space. As long as it was stable enough, it could swallow anything in its path into the void, even the attacks of others. Just imagine, when someone attacked Yang Kai with a killer move or artifact, the space blade would directly swallow that attack or artifact. At that time, Yang Kai would no longer need to use any defensive means, as attacking was his best defense. However, this stability would be interfered with by the attacks of other cultivators. Once the interference was severe, the void crack would close, rendering the space blade useless. As such, Yang Kai had been studying the stability of the space blade during this time, so its speed hadn't improved much. After consuming a large number of space spirit crystals, Yang Kai's method of burning money became a reality, allowing him to gradually gain some insights into the use of his space blade. While cultivating, Yang Kai couldn't feel the passage of time at all. It wasn't until Yang Kai received a divine sense fluctuation from the communication artifact that Yang Kai was suddenly awakened. Qian Tong had sent him a message. Yang Kai quickly picked up the communication artifact, poured his divine sense into it, then immediately stood up and walked out. 3 months was still too short for him to thoroughly study the space blade. At this stage, he couldn't use it against his enemies, but now that Liu Yang Sand Field had opened, Yang Kai didn't have time to continue his retreat. After 3 months of cultivation, both the purple shield and the 100 Mountains picture had become much more compatible with his body and could be used in battle. He had also refined 2 bottles of snow and ice pills, which should be enough for an emergency. After leaving the cave, young Kai was slightly startled as he found that Dragon Cave Mountain seemed to have undergone some significant changes. Not only was the world energy here extremely rich, but the various peaks were also shrouded in a dense fog. Many exquisite houses had been built around the cave as well as a number of strange objects. The several dozen cultivators who followed Wu Yi were all busy while Wu Yi and Yang Yang were both concentrating on something, both of them looking very excited. Seeing young Kai come out of seclusion, the 2 women were stunned for a moment, but soon understood and put down what they were doing and walked over. "Are you going to leave?" Wu Yi asked. Yang Kai nodded gently and said, "After I leave, don't let anyone enter my stone room, and don't touch the profound insect stone inside, there are some very dangerous things inside." "I know," Wu Yi responded quickly. "The 2 origin-grade artifacts Elder Qian requested have been delivered, right?" Yang Kai turned to Yang Yang again. "I gave them to them long ago. About 10 days after you entered seclusion, Elder Qian personally delivered a large number of materials. At that time, I gave the 2 artifacts to him." "That's good. You can go, but Xiao Xiao has to stay. Without his help, refining things is too laborious," Yang Yang added. Xiao Xiao was the stone mongoose, a name Yang Yang had given him without permission. Yang Kai didn't care. In any case, on this trip to the Liu Yang sandfield, he wouldn't need the stone mongoose, so he nodded and agreed. After exhorting them a few more things, he hurriedly rushed towards Heavenly Fate City. Halfway there, young Kai saw a blue light fly over from the distance, and upon arriving, he discovered that it was Luo Qing. "Young Master Yang." Luo Qing stopped his star shuttle and cupped his fists to young Kai. "Elder Qian said to take you to the space array as soon as possible. Everyone is ready, you're the only one left." "Many thanks." Young Kai returned the courtesy and rushed towards Heavenly Fate City with him. On the way, young Kai asked Luo Qing about the Liu Yang sandfield. Luo Qing didn't know much, only that the restricted area was about to open. Now, all the great forces on Shadowed Star were rushing to different entrances, waiting for the restricted area to open before immediately swarming in. Flying over Heavenly Fate City, the pair arrived directly in front of a palace. After entering the palace, young Kai was surprised to find that there were almost 200 people gathered here, 90% of whom were Saint King realm cultivator. Most of them were 2nd or 3rd order Saint Kings, with a few 1st order Saint Kings present. Liu Yang sandfield was very dangerous, so even a 1st order Saint King wouldn't be of much use inside. Yang Kai frowned. Didn't Qian Tong say that there were only 50 spots in the Shadow Moon Hall? Why are there so many people here? And looking at their posture, it seemed that they were all going to the Liu Yang sandfield through the space array. As soon as young Kai arrived, he attracted countless gazes. Qian Tong even came out laughing and greeted him enthusiastically. "Nephew Yang, you've come at the right time. We have just finished gathering here and will soon open the space array. Come with this old master." Last time, young Kai promised to help him refine 2 origin-grade artifacts, and it only took him 10 days to obtain them. Although they were only origin-grade low-rank artifacts, they were infinitely close to origin-grade mid-rank. Now, these 2 defensive artifacts had been taken away by Wei Guchang and Dong Shena. If these 2 artifacts were to be put up for auction, they would be worth at least 4 million Saint Crystals, not to mention they were ice attribute artifacts, which were the best way to restrain the heat of Liu Yang sandfield, so their price would likely be even higher. Qian Tong's previous efforts to show goodwill to young Kai had all been taken back. Now, Qian Tong was naturally extremely polite to young Kai. Even this time, when everyone was gathered, Qian Tong had first gathered everyone before sending a message to young Kai, afraid that young Kai would wait too long. Seeing Qian Tong personally greet young Kai, many of the cultivator in the hall couldn't help looking over in surprise, wondering what was so special about this 1st order Saint King cultivator that made Qian Tong act so politely. "Senior brother Wei, who is that guy? We waited for so long, could it be that we were waiting for him?" A pretty girl took the opportunity to get close to Wei Jiu Chang's side, and asked in a soft voice. He doesn't look like someone with a great background, and his strength is so low, only a first-order Saint King, someone nearby immediately echoed. Wei Guchang glanced at them and moved away from the woman, saying lightly, "You don't need to know who he is, just don't provoke him." After eating Wei Guchang's neither soft nor hard rebuke, the woman smiled awkwardly and stepped aside, her heart filled with bitterness. Wei Guchang was the most talented disciple of Shadow Moon Hall, a man of striking appearance and upright character. Naturally, he would attract the gazes of many women, causing many of the women in Shadow Moon Hall to secretly fall in love with him. However, he didn't show any concern for other women, as if in his eyes, there was only Dong Xian. Chapter 1168. Inside the hall, there were nearly 50 people wearing Shadow Moon Hall's disciple robes, looking very neat and uniform. The other 100 or so people were not the same. Seemingly seeing Yang Kai's doubts, Chen Tong took the initiative to explain, "My Shadow Moon Hall, including nephew Yang, has a total of 50 spots. The others are from families or sects affiliated to Shadow Moon Hall. They also have some spots, but not many. There are also some families and sects that have nothing to do with my Shadow Moon Hall. They are all passing through Heavenly Fate City and will be leaving with us." Yang Kai suddenly understood why there were so many people gathered in the hall. The great forces of Shadowed Star did a good job in this regard and didn't try to monopolize the benefits. Instead, they allocated some spots to the smaller forces and small families. Whether or not they could obtain any benefits after entering would depend on their own efforts and means. Thinking about it this way, last time Chen Tong said that every time Liu Yang Sandfield opened, no less than 10,000 people would enter. Shadowed Star was simply too big, so even if each force did not have many spots, the total number would not be less than 10,000. While following Chen Tong inside, Yang Kai suddenly turned his head and looked in a certain direction. From that direction, he saw a pair of eyes staring at him with hatred. Yang Kai was very sensitive to this kind of gaze and naturally felt it. When the two's eyes met, the man's eyes flashed a few times before he quickly looked away. Xie Hongwen. He was also going. Last time, when Xie Hongwen went to Dragon Cave Mountain to find trouble with Yang Kai, if Chen Tong had not arrived, Xie Hongwen would have died. This playboy young master's character was terrible. Although he was a first-order Saint King, his true combat strength was nothing to scoff at, so why was he going? What made Yang Kai even more puzzled was that Xie Hongwen's clothes were not the same as those of Shadow Moon Hall. There were also 2 third-order Saint King cultivator accompanying him, seemingly responsible for protecting him. "Senior, can Liu Yang kill people in the sand?" Yang Kai suddenly asked. Seeing Yang Kai and Xie Hongwen's eyes meet, Chen Tong naturally knew what was going on. He sneered and nodded, "Yes, so nephew must be careful. Don't make enemies easily, but if someone dares to bully you, there is no need to be soft-hearted. If anything happens, this old master will take care of it for you." "Thank you, senior." Yang Kai also sneered. If Xie Hongwen stayed in Liu Yang's sand, he would let him go. But if he really dared to seek revenge, Yang Kai would not show mercy. He did not kill him last time out of respect for Chen Tong. Chen Tong looked a little annoyed. After all, he had spent a lot of effort to save Xie Hongwen's life. Who knew that this idiot not only did not know how to be grateful, but also held a grudge in his heart. If he wanted to seek his own death, Chen Tong couldn't do anything about it. That idiot wasn't qualified to enter Liu Yang's sand. My Shadow Moon Hall won't waste a spot on such a waste. For some reason, Chen Tong explained to Yang Kai in a low voice, but his father spent some money to buy 3 spots from a small family affiliated with Shadow Moon Hall, allowing him to enter. Those 2 third-order Saint Kings are disciples of his Xie family, not my Shadow Moon Hall. What he meant was that there was no harm in killing them. However, what surprised Yang Kai was that these spots could be transferred, so he immediately asked. Chen Tong chuckled, "Naturally, they can be transferred. The allocation of spots was decided in advance by each great force. Each force has a fixed number of spots, but no one cares who goes. Doesn't that mean that as long as a force has enough courage and means, they can send more people than what they've been allocated?" Yang Kai immediately thought of something. That may be the case, But Liu Yang's sand is too dangerous. Which great force dares to send too many elites in? Once the losses are serious, there will be a gap in manpower, which will be extremely detrimental to the development of any great force. But what my dear nephew says is right as well. Besides the 50 people that my Shadow Moon Palace has on the surface, we have indeed obtained more than 20 spots from some of the smaller family clans. Hence, among those who are going this time, there are more than 70 disciples from my Shadow Moon Palace. I understand, Yang Kai nodded gently. There are many things you need to pay attention to in Liu Yang's sand. Last time, nephew Yang left in a hurry, so this old man didn't have time to tell you. You can follow Jiyu Chang and Shen to the teleportation array. On the way, they will explain everything clearly to you. If there's anything you don't understand, you can ask them, Chen Tong advised. Okay. Yang Kai smiled slightly. He knew that Chen Tong was creating an opportunity for Wei Guchang and Dong Xian'er to befriend him, so naturally, he wouldn't be polite. As they spoke, the two arrived in front of the space array. Chen Tong waved his hand and Wei Guchang and Dong Xian'er immediately walked over. The two of you will teleport with Yang Kai. When you arrive at Jian City, you don't need to wait. Just go directly to Liu Yang's sand field. Your martial uncle Wang and martial uncle Yang will be waiting there. When you get there, they will tell you what to do. This old man will bring these people to meet up with you. Yes, Wei Guchang nodded respectfully and grinned at Yang Kai. Greetings, Brother Yang. His attitude this time was much better than last time. It was clear that Chen Tong had carefully instructed him. Dong Xian'er also bowed gracefully. Yang Kai exchanged some pleasantries with them, and the three of them immediately stood on the space array. The space array had already been prepared and could be activated as soon as they arrived. When the Shadow Moon Hall disciple guarding the space array saw that the three of them were standing firmly, he quickly activated the space array. With a flash of white light, the three of them disappeared from everyone's sight. Chen Tong then hurriedly arranged for the others to use the space array. The space array could only teleport a maximum of 5 people at a time, and it would take 1 to 2 hours to teleport nearly 200 people. On the other side, Yang Kai only felt a slight dizziness. When his vision recovered, he found that he was already in another large hall. This large hall also had a space array. It was unknown which faction the disciple guarding the space array belonged to. When the three of them appeared, one of them asked, "Are you from Shadow Moon Hall?" Wei Guchang nodded, took out a token from his sleeve, and handed it over. The guard took it and checked it before returning it and happily letting them pass. After leaving the hall, Wei Guchang said, "Brother Yang, please come with me. This is Jian City, 1,000,000 kilometers away from Heavenly Fate City. We need to fly for a day or two before we can reach the edge of the Liu Yang Desert. Brother Wei, please lead the way." Yang Kai nodded. He was not familiar with the places on Shadowed Star, so naturally, he would follow Wei Guchang's lead at this moment. Wei Guchang did not say a word, simply summoning his star shuttle and extending his hand to Dong Xian'er. Dong Xian'er's face blushed slightly as she glared at him, seemingly blaming him for acting so boldly in front of others. Wei Guchang laughed and said, "Brother Yang is not an outsider, what's there to be shy about?" Dong Xian'er couldn't argue with him, so she stretched out her hand and allowed Wei Guchang to pull her up onto the star shuttle. Yang Kai couldn't help smiling as this scene made him feel a little warm. His impression of Wei Guchang and Dong Xian'er couldn't help changing as he quickly summoned his star shuttle. 2 blue lights flashed and the group of 3 flew off in a certain direction, soon leaving Jian City. Wei Guchang's star shuttle was the same as Yang Kai's, both Saint King grade high rank, so even if it carried one person, the difference in speed wasn't great. After leaving Jian City, Wei Guchang said, "Elder Chen said that Brother Yang doesn't know much about the Liu Yang Desert. Does Brother Yang have anything he wants to know? If this Wei knows, he will definitely tell you the truth." Yang Kai was just about to ask about these things when Wei Guchang took the initiative to speak. "I only know that we need to pass through some special places to enter the Liu Yang Desert. As for the situation inside the Liu Yang Desert and what we need to pay attention to, I don't know, so I hope Brother Wei can give me some pointers." Seeing Yang Kai speak so politely, Wei Guchang also smiled. "I wouldn't dare give you pointers, But this Wei has some elders to guide me, so I understand a little more than Brother Yang. It's not a big deal, as long as Brother Yang asks around, he will be able to understand. He learned from Qian Tong that Yang Kai came from the outside world, so Yang Kai probably really didn't know anything about the Liuyang desert, so he patiently told Yang Kai everything he knew. Dong Xian interjected from time to time, each time hitting the nail on the head and speaking bluntly. With the cooperation of the brother and sister, Yang Kai quickly gained a comprehensive understanding of the Liuyang desert. The Liuyang desert was shrouded in scorching heat all year round, so origin-returning realm masters and Saint King realm cultivators were not allowed to enter. Only now could a Saint King realm cultivator enter to explore. However, not all parts of the Liuyang desert were covered in scorching heat. It could be considered a large circular territory, and the Liuyang desert was divided into several layers. The outermost territory was the scorching heat zone, so the deeper one went, the more dangerous it became. In this scorching heat zone, there were some precious treasures, but even more rare ores. These ores had been baked by the scorching heat for many years and were extremely pure. Some of these ores could even be directly used for artifact refining, and their quality was extremely high, several times more valuable than those mined outside. The danger of the scorching heat zone wasn't just the unbearable heat, but also the fire spirit beasts and Liuyang flying fires. These two were life-threatening threats. Fire spirit beasts were a kind of monster beast formed by the accumulation of fire attribute world energy to a certain extent. Their bodies were illusory, and the more solid their bodies were, the stronger they were. They had no sentience, so ordinary direct attacks had no effect on them. Divine sense attacks were also ineffective, so only Saint Chi attacks could destroy them. It was best to use an ice attribute offensive artifact. As long as one had the ability and conditions, almost everyone who entered the Liuyang desert would prepare an ice attribute offensive artifact. Fire spirit beasts also had fire crystal stones inside their bodies. Fire crystal stones had a great effect when used to refine some special pills and artifacts, improving the quality of these pills and artifacts. On Shadowed Star, the standard of alchemy and artifact refining was only origin grade low rank, so if one wanted to refine origin grade mid-rank pills and artifacts, fire crystal stones were essential. Chapter 1169. Because of the preciousness of the fire crystal stones, many of the cultivators from the major forces who entered the Liuyang sand field had come specifically to hunt fire spirit beasts. Some cultivators from small families and forces also had the same idea. After obtaining the fire crystal stones, they would be able to make a huge profit by selling them. This kind of thing could not be found outside, and could only be found in the Liuyang sand field. It was the favorite of alchemists and weapon refiners. Brother Yang, if you encounter a fire spirit beast with a physical body, do not fight with it. A fire spirit beast with a physical body is almost equivalent to a ninth-order monster beast. It is the most difficult to deal with, Wei Guchang warned with a serious look. A ninth-order monster beast was equivalent to a master of the origin-returning realm. Naturally, a Saint King realm cultivator would not be able to gain any advantage over it. One careless mistake and they would be killed. After saying this, he sneered and said, "But this kind of thing is very rare. It is basically impossible to encounter it." Yang Kai gently nodded and asked, "I understand the situation of the fire spirit beast. What is Liuyang flying fire?" Wei Guchang's expression immediately became serious and he said in a deep voice, "Liuyang flying fire is more harmful to the cultivator who enters the sand field than the fire spirit beasts. Fortunately, it is not as abundant as the fire spirit beasts. Liuyang flying fire is very rare. Some people may never encounter it. Even if they do, they will only encounter one or two at most. But Brother Yang, do not underestimate Liuyang flying fire. This kind of thing is extremely fast, even faster than the spread of divine sense. It is extremely difficult to detect. You may not even notice it when it flies past you." Yang Kai could not help but be shocked. Being able to spread faster than the spread of divine sense, one could imagine how strange this thing was. Not only is it dangerous, but it is also very lethal. If one's guard is not up to par or if their strength is insufficient, once they are hit by one, Their soul will be incinerated and they will be reduced to ashes in the blink of an eye. Elder Chen told me that every time the flowing flame sand field opened, some unlucky fellows would be killed by the flowing flame flying fire. Isn't this an undeserved disaster? Yang Kai was surprised. Wei Guchang smiled and said, Brother Yang is right. This is an undeserved disaster. But since one dared to enter the Liu Yang sand field, one must be prepared to bear a certain degree of risk. Liu Yang's flying fire to be. Brother. Yang Kai looked at her in amazement, thinking to himself that this Liu Yang flying fire was also a good thing. Wei Guchang laughed and said, That's exactly what I was going to say. Liu Yang flying fire is indeed very terrifying, but it is also an extremely precious treasure. Brother Yang should know that some people have different divine senses, right? Variant divine senses? Yang Kai's expression changed. Yes, variant divine senses. Some people's divine senses contain some strange attributes, such as conflagrated knowledge C, divine sense poison, and divine sense ice. Although these variant divine senses are different from ordinary people's divine senses, without exception, they all have extraordinary powers. Needless to say, conflagrated knowledge C is the variant divine sense that alchemists and artifact refiners desire the most, while conflagrated knowledge C and divine sense poison are unpredictable. These variant divine senses are extremely rare. Some are born with them, while others are obtained through cultivation of certain secret arts and martial skills. Of course, these secret arts and martial skills are also very rare and ordinary people can't even come across them. Even my Shadow Moon Hall doesn't have such things. Some of them are obtained through some fortuitous encounters. Yang Kai deeply agreed. His conflagrated knowledge C was obtained by chance. When he was in the central capital, he wanted to swallow the true spirit born in a piece of fire attribute jade to enhance his strength, but as a result, his divine sense mutated. He knew more about the wonders of conflagrated knowledge C than anyone else. And Liu Yang's flying fire has a chance to mutate one's divine sense, allowing one to possess a conflagrated knowledge C. Wei Guchang's eyes lit up. Brother Yang, think about it, which alchemist and artifact refiner doesn't want to possess a conflagrated knowledge C, so if you can obtain Liu Yang's flying fire, those artifact refiners and alchemists will definitely fight over it. Saying so, Wei Guchang intentionally or unintentionally glanced towards Yang Kai. Under the influence of Qian Tong, Wei Guchang believed that Yang Kai had an origin-grade artifact refiner master behind him. Since he was an artifact refiner, there was no reason for him not to be tempted by Liu Yang's flying fire. As a disciple, Yang Kai would naturally want to show filial piety to his master. But to Wei Guchang's disappointment, Yang Kai's expression remained unchanged, as if he didn't care at all. Wei Guchang quickly continued, Of course, there is a certain risk involved in mutating one's divine sense. It is very likely that one's divine sense will fail to mutate and will instead be burned to ashes by Liu Yang's flying fire. In any case, Brother Yang just needs to pay attention. Basically no one can obtain Liu Yang's flying fire, so if you encounter it, avoid it as soon as possible. Yang Kai nodded, remaining calm on the surface, but in his heart, he was wondering if he should chase after it if he really encountered it. Liu Yang's flying fire could mutate one's divine sense and give birth to a conflagrated knowledge C, but Yang Kai already had a conflagrated knowledge C, so he shouldn't be afraid of Liu Yang's flying fire. The situation in this flame area is roughly like this. In addition to resisting the heat, one only needs to pay attention to the fire spirit beasts and Liu Yang's flying fire. The power of the heat in the outermost flame area is not the same. The further in you go, the stronger the heat, and the more difficult it is to resist. But if you can pass through the outermost flame area and enter the second layer, then you'll be in heaven. Why do you say that? Yang Kai's interest was immediately piqued. Because the second layer is the treasure area. There is no heat, only treasure area and a small number of monster beasts. Once you enter the second layer, in addition to guarding against the sneak attacks of others, it's fine as long as you don't get targeted by a high-level monster beast. It can be said that as long as you enter the second layer, your harvest will definitely not be small. Yang Kai's eyes lit up. There is such a territory area like this. Wei Guchang looked at Yang Kai with a smile, very satisfied with Yang Kai's current expression. Of course. Otherwise, how could the Liu Yang sand be so attractive? Although some good things are suitable for growing in places with high temperatures, they are still in the minority. Without the treasure area, the value of the Liu Yang sand would be reduced by at least half. Us brother and sister are mainly going to the treasure area this time. Naturally, there will be others who will hunt the fire spirit beasts. There is no need for us to do it. He and Dongxian's position in the Shadow Moon Hall was not low, so this kind of manual labor was naturally left to the junior brothers and sisters. They were only responsible for getting as much benefit from the treasure area as possible. It wasn't just the Shadow Moon Hall, but all the other major forces did the same. Of the disciples who entered, more than half of them would go to the flame area to hunt fire spirit beasts and fire crystal stones. Only the elites of the elites would enter the treasure area to search for good things and their own opportunities. The Liu Yang sand is divided into 2 territory areas. Yang Kai clicked his tongue in wonder. This was beyond his expectations. It's not just 2 territory areas. Wei Guchang shook his head, because if you go deeper into the treasure area, you will encounter a second flame area. The second flame area is much more dangerous than the outermost flame area. Elder Chen strictly ordered us not to go there. Since there is a second flame area, is there a second treasure area? Yang Kai's expression changed. I don't know, because since the founding of the Shadow Moon Hall, no one has ever broken into the second flame area, but many elite disciples have died tragically inside. Not to mention the Shadow Moon Hall, even great forces like Heaven Battling Union, Thunder Typhoon Sect, and Star Emperor Sect probably don't know the situation inside. In other words, everyone is concentrated in the territory of the 2 outermost flame areas. You can put it that way, but Brother Yang can rest assured, that damned place is very big, so unless you use some special means to contact others, you may not even meet a single living person in there for half a year. What do you mean by half a year? Right, I forgot to tell Brother Yang that every time the Liu Yang sandfield opens, it only lasts for half a year. Once the half-year period is up, everyone will be sent out and no one can stay inside for long. In addition, star shuttles are not allowed inside as there is some kind of mysterious force that suppresses the ability of star shuttles. Even we can't fly. If we want to hurry, we can only rely on our movement skills and martial skills to increase our speed. This is the most troublesome part. Wei Guchang shook his head and said, a look of dissatisfaction on his face. If it weren't for some kind of inexplicable force that restricted all flying artifacts and abilities, the harvest of those who entered would definitely be several times greater. Hearing this, Yang Kai secretly rejoiced. He didn't know what methods others had to increase their speed, but he had the wind and thunder wings. Although the wind and thunder wings were mainly used for flight, they could definitely increase one's speed. The only thing Yang Kai didn't know was whether the wind and thunder wings could be used inside. After all, this thing wasn't a flight-type artifact, so it shouldn't be restricted. It seemed that he would have to test it out as soon as he entered. In addition, Brother Yang, there is one thing you need to pay attention to. Although we will enter the Liu Yang sand field from the same entrance, the places we will appear in may be very different, so each of us must carry a special communication compass to make it easier for us to find each other. When Wei Guchang said these words, Dongxian immediately took out a communication compass from her space ring and handed it to Yang Kai. Communication compasses were refined in sets, and the number of each set varied. Generally speaking, only 3 to 5 or 7 would be refined in a set. Of course, there was no upper limit to the number of communication compasses, and an artifact refiner could refine as many as they wanted. Each communication compass could only be used to transmit information to and from the same set of artifacts, so there was no need to worry about irrelevant people eavesdropping on them. Qian Tong had given Yang Kai a communication artifact last time, but that was only for the 2 of them to communicate with each other. Unlike this one, Yang Kai also had several artifacts he could use to communicate with Wu Yi and Yang Yang. Yang Kai had several of these artifacts in his space ring. Although Yang Kai didn't intend to act together with Wei Guchang and the others, he still took the communication compass and tossed it into his space ring. Junior sister, I didn't say anything wrong, right? Wei Guchang asked Dongxian. He was also worried that he would say something wrong and cause Yang Kai to encounter danger inside. You shouldn't, Dong Xiena shook her head gently. Then that's all for now. If Brother Yang has anything to ask, just ask, Wei Guchang grinned. Good. Chapter 1170. Wei Guchang was actually a very talkative person, and after gradually becoming familiar with Yang Kai, the two of them began to talk about more and more. From the distribution of the great forces on Shadowed Star to the famous young talents, Wei Guchang was able to speak clearly and logically, allowing Yang Kai to benefit greatly. Wei Guchang also intentionally or unintentionally tried to lead the conversation to the outside world, but every time he did, Yang Kai would subtly change the subject. After a few times, Wei Guchang tactfully stopped bringing it up. He thought that Yang Kai was unwilling to talk about the wonders of the outside world, but in fact, it was because Yang Kai didn't know much about it. Since entering Star Territory, he had only been to Water Moon Star and Rainfall Star, and the people he had dealt with were basically people from Heng Luo Chamber of Commerce. He didn't know much about the distribution of the great forces on Star Territory, so how could he possibly talk to Wei Guchang? Dong Xiena, on the other hand, was relatively quiet. Most of the time, she was alone in contemplation, occasionally revealing a happy expression, as if as long as she was held in Wei Guchang's arms, it didn't matter where she went. A day later, Yang Kai could clearly feel that the temperature in the air had become much hotter. Everywhere he passed, the landscape gradually became barren. The ground was filled with reddish-brown sand, and the further he flew, the more serious this situation became. The Liu Yang sand field covered Shadowed Star, and its scorching temperature had already affected the surrounding environment. At a certain moment, Yang Kai raised his head and stared into the distance. All he could see was a sea of red. It was as if the entire world had been dyed red, and a huge amount of heat was radiating from that place, distorting his vision. That's the edge of the Liu Yang sand field. Wei Guchang pointed to the territory where the dark red energy curtain flowed, a dignified look appearing on his face. It seems that there is still some time before we can enter the Liu Yang sand field. Is there any way to tell? Yang Kai asked. The change in color of the energy curtain is the best sign. When it turns light red, we will be able to enter through those entrances. If we go in now, we will all die. Wei Guchang took a deep breath, and a look of fear appeared on his face. After flying forward for a long time, the three of them finally arrived at the periphery of the Liu Yang sand field. At this time, there were at least 500 people gathered here. These people were divided into groups of different sizes. They each found a good place to sit and rest. It seemed that they had arrived here first and were waiting for the cultivator of the Liu Yang sand field to open. Seeing Yang Kai and the other two arrive, these people all looked at them. These people were all Saint Kings, with the occasional origin returning realm cultivator among them, but they were nothing more than elders leading the group. Further ahead, there was a group of origin returning realm masters scattered around the periphery of the Liu Yang sandfield, all of them solemnly observing the changes in the Liu Yang sandfield. This group of people was the most powerful group of people on Shadowed Star, all of them third-order origin returning realm masters. Many of them had been observing this place for months or even half a year in order to pass on information about the Liu Yang sandfield to their respective sects as soon as possible so that they could make preparations. Shadow Moon Hall was relatively far away from here, so naturally, they had arrived late. After the three landed, they casually found a place where no one else was around. Wei Guchang looked into the distance and said, "Brother Yang, wait here. I'll take junior sister to find my martial uncle and martial sister and greet them, lest they complain about our lack of etiquette." "Brother Wei, you don't need to worry about me," Yang Kai nodded lightly. Wei Guchang and Dong Xiena summoned their star shuttles and flew off in a certain direction, disappearing a moment later. Yang Kai didn't pay any attention to them and instead looked around. The cultivator groups that had come here were all in groups, with the smallest group consisting of 20 or so people while the largest group was as large as the Shadow Moon Hall, with a total of 50 people gathered together. They all looked at Yang Kai curiously, many of them with contempt and disdain in their eyes. Yang Kai's cultivation was too low, and he had come with Wei Guchang and Dong Xiena, so it was easy for people to mistakenly think that the three of them were from some small family. Only small families would have 2 or 3 spots to enter Shadow Moon Hall. Not long after Yang Kai sat down, a group of 2 people walked over and stood in front of him, looking down at him condescendingly. Yang Kai could clearly see that these 2 were from a group of about 30 people. Being able to obtain 30 spots to enter Liu Yang Sandfield, although this group couldn't compare to the Shadow Moon Hall, it shouldn't be small. And it wasn't just them, many people from the large and small groups had already stood up and wanted to approach him, but these 2 were the fastest, so they could only temporarily give up and stand in place to observe. Why are they looking for me? Yang Kai was puzzled. These 2 weren't very old, about 30 to 40 years old. One was a 3rd-order Saint King cultivator while the other was a 1st-order Saint King. They didn't look like evil people, but the leading 3rd-order Saint King had a palm-sized scarlet scar on his forehead that gave him a somewhat fierce look. "Friend." The man with the scar on his face called out, "Are you also going to enter Liu Yang Sandfield?" Although there was nothing wrong with what he asked, Yang Kai could clearly hear the doubt and disdain in his tone. On the other hand, the man behind him was staring at Yang Kai with a burning gaze, as if Yang Kai had something he wanted. Yang Kai didn't want to pay attention to these 2, but this time, he had come here with the Shadow Moon Hall. If there was any conflict, it would make things difficult for Qian Tong, so after thinking about it, he patiently nodded, yes. The man grinned, "Your strength isn't high, it will be very dangerous for you to enter." "That's my business." Yang Kai vaguely guessed what they wanted to do. Before, Qian Tong had said that the spots to enter Liu Yang Sandfield could be transferred, so these 2 were probably after his spot. The other people who stood up and wanted to come over probably did so for the same reason, but the scarred man beat them to it. Sure enough, the scarred man shook his head and said, "I'm saying this for your own good. Look, there are only 3 of you, and that man and woman seem to be in love with each other. They probably won't be able to take care of you once you enter. You're really going to die." As he spoke, he showed an extremely exaggerated expression, as if he was really worried about Yang Kai's safety. But when he saw that Yang Kai's expression was calm and not afraid at all, he couldn't help but feel a little bored and said, "I have a business here, do you want to do it?" "Not interested." Yang Kai decisively refused. Since he knew what they wanted to do, Yang Kai was too lazy to talk nonsense with them. "Don't be in a hurry to refuse." The scarred man smiled, squatted down and whispered, "Look, friend, you're risking your life to enter Liu Yang Sandfield, and you might not be able to come out. You're only going in to look for some benefits, right? I have an idea that will allow you to reap some benefits without putting your life in danger." Saying so, he took out an artifact from his space ring and handed it to Yang Kai. "This is a Saint King grade low-rank artifact, its quality is very good, I'll give it to you as a gift. I believe that after you refine it, your strength will definitely soar. Of course, I'm not giving it to you for free, all I want is your entry pass." "What entry pass?" Yang Kai was stunned. "It's the pass to enter Liu Yang Sandfield, don't play dumb." The first-order Saint King cultivator who had been staring at Yang Kai with burning eyes shouted, "There's such a thing." Yang Kai frowned, he had never heard Wei Gucheng mention such a thing, and Qian Tong hadn't given him any proof either. Seeing Yang Kai's blank look, the scarred man thought he was playing dumb and couldn't help sneering, "Don't be so shameless, friend. My junior brother just wants to enter Liu Yang Sandfield with us, but unfortunately, my Blue Sparrow sect doesn't have enough spots. Now that we've taken a fancy to your entry pass, we're giving you face. Besides, I'm not asking for your entry pass for free, didn't I already give you an artifact? You want to buy my entry pass with a Saint King grade low-rank artifact?" Yang Kai sneered, "Not to mention I don't have any entry pass, even if I did, I wouldn't sell it to you. Friend, are you refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit? Can you let me see your space ring?" The scarred man's face also became gloomy. "You want to see my space ring? Do you have the ability?" Yang Kai's expression became cold. Every cultivator's space ring was a very private thing, and under normal circumstances, it was impossible for others to make such a request. The scarred man's words made Yang Kai burn with anger. This was no different from directly slapping his face. "Brother, don't talk nonsense with him, just grab it, he won't dare say anything." The First Order Saint King cultivator seemed to want to enter Liu Yang sand field and couldn't help urging the scarred man. Seeing the scarred man hesitate, he actually reached out to grab Yang Kai's space ring. Yang Kai's patience had long since reached its limit. These two had been chattering in front of him, trying to snatch his space ring by force, which was really disgusting. Seeing the First Order Saint King cultivator reach out to grab him, Yang Kai didn't dodge and instead reached out to grab him. How could a trivial First Order Saint King avoid Yang Kai's attack? Caught off guard, he found that his hand had been firmly grasped by his opponent. While he was still in shock, a series of cracking sounds were heard. He looked at his hand in shock and found that his arm had been twisted into a fried dough twist by the other party. The intense pain only came now, and an earth-shattering scream came from his mouth. His forehead was instantly covered with bean-sized beads of sweat. "You dare!" The scarred man didn't seem to react until now. Seeing his junior brother suffer such a big loss, he pushed his Saint Chi and sent a punch towards Yang Kai's face. This fist was filled with powerful strength and was aimed at Yang Kai's vital points, obviously intending to kill him. Yang Kai dragged the junior brother in front of him. The scarred man was unable to withdraw his fist in time and his expression changed drastically, only managing to withdraw half of his strength in a hurry. With a muffled bang, the junior brother's face turned pale as he fell to the ground, twitching. Chapter 1171. Without waiting for the scarred man to make a move, Yang Kai also threw a punch towards the scarred man's face. With another muffled bang, the scarred man flew through the air and spun several times before landing heavily on the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust. He was just a third-order Saint King, and if it weren't for his junior brother being injured by him, causing him to be momentarily distracted, he wouldn't have been defeated so easily by Yang Kai. At the very least, he should have been able to resist a few moves. However, his carelessness had allowed Yang Kai to succeed with a single blow. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. From the moment the First Order Saint King cultivator grabbed Yang Kai to the moment the scarred man was knocked to the ground, only a single breath had passed. This caused the other cultivator who had been secretly paying attention to the situation here to be shocked, all of them revealing looks of disbelief. A First Order Saint King cultivator had actually sent a Third Order Saint King flying with a single punch. Even if the latter had been slightly careless, he shouldn't have been so weak, right? Which family does this little brat come from? How is he so fierce? Fortunately, I didn't go over just now, otherwise I'm afraid I would have ended up like Yin Jian. This little brat is finished. Although he looks very powerful, he actually dared to hit Yin Jian in front of so many Blue Sparrow sect disciples. His family is finished. A burst of whispers sounded from the surrounding teams. The nearly 30 people from Blue Sparrow sect all wore cold expressions as they stood up and glared towards Yang Kai with unfriendly looks on their faces. Some of them were even filled with righteous indignation and quickly rushed over. The only second-order origin returning realm old man from Blue Sparrow sect who had come to lead this group watched with a gloomy expression. He didn't move because of his status, but he also didn't stop his subordinates from stirring up trouble. Obviously, he intended to teach Yang Kai a lesson. In the blink of an eye, Kai Yang was surrounded by 30 people. All of them were glaring at him like a tiger watching its prey. Many of them were letting out strange laughs that sounded extremely gloomy. The scarred man named Yin Jian struggled to get up from the ground. There was a look of astonishment on his face. It seemed that he didn't expect to suffer such a big loss under Yang Kai's hands. After standing up, his face turned green and then white. The other First Order Saint King cultivator, whose arm had been broken by Yang Kai, howled even more miserably. "Don't do anything," Yin Jian angrily shouted, stopping his fellow disciples from coming forward to beat up Yang Kai. He rubbed his somewhat blurred eyes and stared at Yang Kai with a murderous look. This kind of humiliation, of course, he had to wash it off himself in order to regain his face. "Brat, you've got guts. I'm doing business with you. It's fine if you don't agree, but you actually dare to play dirty." Yin Jianzhong shook his neck. He didn't think that his failure was because his skills were inferior, but because he was attacked by Yang Kai. When he said this, many people showed a look of understanding, thinking that Yin Jian had been attacked by a sneak attack, which was why his eyes were swollen. Business? Yang Kai laughed, his expression becoming cold as he shouted, "You're trying to force a deal, aren't you?" An unnatural expression flashed across Yin Zhenzhong's face. He no longer bothered with this issue and coldly snorted, "Brat, don't talk nonsense. You dare to hurt my junior brother. Today, I'll make sure you can't bear the consequences." Saying so, Yin Jian's Saint Qi fluctuated and a ruler-shaped artifact appeared in his hand. Yang Kai's punch made Yin Jian understand that there was something wrong with this First-Order Saint King, so he summoned his artifact as soon as the battle began. He wanted to end this quickly so he wouldn't suffer another loss at Yang Kai's hands. If he were to suffer a loss again, he would have no excuse to cover up his incompetence. Yang Kai was from a trivial small family that didn't even have an elder to lead the team. Even if he killed him here, the most he would have to do was pay some saint crystals as compensation afterwards. Yin Jian didn't put the force behind Yang Kai in his eyes at all. But before he could take action, a burst of laughter suddenly rang out from the distance. "Interesting, this Wei has only left for a short while. How come someone has already dared to bully my Shadow Moon Hall?" Shadow Moon Hall? Yin Jian looked shocked as he looked Yang Kai up and down in amazement, a slight panic appearing in his eyes. The faces of the nearly 30 Blue Sparrow sect disciples surrounding Yang Kai also changed. Not far away, Wei Jiu Chang's whole body was shrouded in black mist as he strode over. In his hand, there was a pitch-black energy ball that he was tossing up and down as if it was a real object. That energy ball contained a terrifying power. An almost suffocating aura emanated from his body, causing the faces of all the Blue Sparrow sect disciples to turn ugly. Dong Xian, who was following closely behind Yang Kai, also seemed to have some kind of inexplicable energy flowing around her as faint arcs of wind swirled around her tender body, like butterflies fluttering about, a beautiful sight to behold. "Are you from the Shadow Moon Hall?" Yin Jian no longer dared to underestimate Yang Kai and quickly asked. "Although it has nothing to do with you, I still have to tell you that I'm not from the Shadow Moon Hall." Yang Kai looked at him mockingly. "If you want to fight, hurry up, don't worry about Shadow Moon Hall's retaliation." Just now, Yin Jian had been acting so domineering, but when Wei Guchang mentioned the words Shadow Moon Hall, this guy immediately became like a mouse that had seen a cat. After listening to Yang Kai's ridicule, Yin Jian's expression changed dramatically. Although he couldn't suppress the anger in his heart, he didn't dare to show any obvious hostility to Yang Kai. Wei Guchang walked straight over with Dong Xian, and the Blue Sparrow sect disciples in front of him involuntarily moved aside, allowing him to easily walk to Yang Kai's side. "Brother Yang, are you okay?" Wei Guchang looked at Yang Kai and found that he was unharmed, so he breathed a sigh of relief. Although Qian Tong said that he could kill a third-order Saint King cultivator, after all, seeing was believing. He didn't know Yang Kai's true strength, but now that he saw Yang Kai being surrounded by 30 people without any change in expression, Wei Guchang was secretly surprised. If he didn't have the ability, it was impossible for him to be so calm. Was he confident he could escape from the siege of 30 Saint King Realm Cultivator? Brother Wei came a bit early. Yang Kai slowly shook his head. Wei Guchang was surprised. He suddenly realized that this Yang Kai wasn't someone who would sit still, seemingly eager to fight with these people from Blue Sparrow sect. Wei Guchang, his Wei Guchang. Someone from Blue Sparrow sect immediately recognized Wei Guchang and exclaimed. Although they had never met before, Wei Guchang had said that he was from Shadow Moon Hall the moment he arrived and called himself Wei. A Saint King Realm cultivator with such power and influence could only be Wei Guchang. What's more, there was a woman beside him. They had heard that Wei Guchang from Shadow Moon Hall and another woman named Dong Xian had always been inseparable. Seeing this scene, if the people from Blue Sparrow sect still couldn't guess Wei Guchang's identity, they would really be blind. Among Shadowed Star's younger generation, Fang Tianzhong, Chu Changfeng, Yin Su Dai, Wei Guchang, Dong Xian, and a number of other outstanding young talents were famous, but Wei Guchang wasn't as ostentatious as Chu Changfeng. He was usually very low-key, so low-key that many from Shadow Moon Hall had only heard of his name but never seen him in person. But this didn't affect his deterrence. After learning that the person who had come was Wei Guchang, Yin Zhen's expression changed and his mouth filled with bitterness. If he had known this information earlier, how could he have brought his junior brother to Yang Kai to buy a pass? It was too late to avoid him, so how could he have delivered himself up to be humiliated? Unlike Yin Zhen's annoyance and bitterness, the cultivator who had wanted to come to Yang Kai but had been beaten to it by Yin Zhen was secretly rejoicing at this moment. Fortunately, Yin Zhen had acted quickly enough, otherwise, it wouldn't be Blue Sparrow sect that would be embarrassed, but them. Brother Yang, what happened? Wei Guchang was very curious. He had only left with Dong Xian'er for a short while to say hello to his martial uncle Wang and martial uncle Yang, but as soon as he returned, he saw Yang Kai surrounded by people. Yang Kai didn't look like someone who liked to cause trouble. Oh, this person brought his junior brother to me to buy a pass to enter Liu Yang Sandfield. Brother Wei, what is a pass? Why haven't you mentioned it before? Yang Kai looked at Wei Guchang suspiciously. Ah, I forgot. Wei Jiuchang scratched his head and said with some embarrassment, but you can't blame me. I haven't gotten my hands on the entry passes yet. They are all in Elder Chen's care. When he comes over, he will distribute them to everyone. When the entrance to Liu Yang Sandfield opens, those who enter must hold a pass. Only then will the seniors let us in. Without a pass, they won't let us in. These passes are specially made by the masters of the major forces. It's impossible to copy them. By the way, Elder Chen will not only distribute the passes, but also give us something called a Yuan magnetic compass. When we enter Liu Yang Sandfield, we need to rely on that thing to determine the direction. Understood. Yang Kai nodded slightly. Since Wei Jiuchang hadn't obtained it himself, Yang Kai naturally didn't expect him to tell him about it. Wei Jiuchang probably thought that it wasn't a big deal and that when Chen Tong came, Yang Kai would naturally understand. While the two of them were chatting, the Blue Sparrow sect disciples all had ugly expressions on their faces. These people clearly didn't put him and the others in their eyes. Otherwise, why would they talk about the passage pass and the Yuan magnetic compass with such an indifferent expression? After Wei Guchang and Yang Kai finished talking, Yin Zhen struggled for a moment before cupping his fists and pretending to be cordial. So it's Brother Jiuchang of Shadow Moon Hall. Is Brother Jiuchang something you can call? Wei Jiuchang did not wait for him to finish speaking and directly interrupted him. This kind of arrogant strength made Yin Zhen's face flush red, and his eyes were about to split open, but he did not dare to have any complaints. Although everyone here was a third-order Saint King, Yin Zhen understood that if he really fought with Wei Guchang, he would be defeated within a few moves. These famous young talents were all monstrous existences. Yin Zhenzhong still had some self-awareness. Chapter 1172. No matter what, Yin Zhen was still the most talented disciple of Blue Sparrow sect. Although his reputation wasn't as great as Wei Guchang's, with his ability, he was indeed qualified to call him Brother Guchang. In the past, when he dealt with the geniuses of other sects, no one cared. But this time, Wei Guchang didn't give him any face at all. His reprimand made Yin Zhen's expression turn ugly. He clenched his teeth and changed his words. Brother Wei, just now, you said that Brother Yang wouldn't be able to bear the consequences. Wei Guchang stared coldly at Yin Zhen and began to criticize him. Chen Tong asked him to bring Yang Kai here first to create an opportunity for him to befriend Yang Kai. He didn't expect that as soon as he left, someone would find trouble with Yang Kai. This made Wei Guchang very angry. Naturally, he wouldn't let it go. If he couldn't even get back at Yang Kai, then he didn't have the qualifications to befriend Yang Kai. What happened just now was really a misunderstanding. If I knew that this friend was from Shadow Moon Hall, I said, I'm not from Shadow Moon Hall. Yang Kai interrupted him again. Yin Zhen's face turned red. He really didn't know what to say. In front of 30 of his fellow disciples, he had shown weakness to Wei Guchang. It was already embarrassing enough. Who knew that the other party would be so unforgiving? He suddenly knew that if he didn't show a clear attitude, there would be no way to be kind. He could only say with a depressed face, this time, it's my fault. I was blind. I hope that Brother Wei and this friend won't take it to heart. As he said this, He slightly cupped his hands and was about to leave with his fellow disciples, far away from this place of trouble. Come and go as you wish. I'm afraid it's not that easy, right? Wei Guchang snorted. He despised people who bullied the weak and feared the strong. If Yin Zhenzhong had dared to go against him, he might have thought more highly of him. However, it was hard for him not to despise this kind of person who liked to bully the weak. In comparison, Yang Kai did not change his expression even when surrounded by 30 people, which made him admire him a lot. Yin Zhenzhong had no choice but to stop. He clenched his fists and the veins on his forehead bulged. He gritted his teeth and shouted, "What else does Brother Wei want? My junior brother's arm has been broken by this friend, and I myself have been punched. Your friend is unharmed, so he didn't suffer any losses, right? I'm not sure if he's at a disadvantage or not. After all, when I arrived, you guys had already surrounded him. Even if Brother Yang doesn't seem to be injured, he might have suffered some shock." Yang Kai's face remained indifferent as he nodded in agreement. The dozens of people from Blue Sparrow sect couldn't help but open their mouths wide. How could such a person be frightened? Obviously, he was not afraid of heaven or earth. Even if a blade was at his neck, he wouldn't blink, so how could he possibly be frightened? This was clearly a blatant lie. Even if they knew that Wei Guchang and Yang Kai were talking nonsense, no one dared to question them. These two were deliberately looking for trouble, so who would be stupid enough to add fuel to the fire? Brother Yang really was frightened. Wei Guchang glanced at Yang Kai seriously and said in a pained tone, "Brother Wei, state your price, this yin will accept it." Yin Zhenzhong sighed helplessly, his left eye bloodshot, either from anger or from Yang Kai's punch just now. 1,000,000 saint crystals. Wei Guchang didn't beat around the bush and directly stated a number. "Brother Wei, don't go too far." Yin Zhenzhong shouted angrily, grinding his teeth. 1,000,000? How do you want me to take it out? Although Blue Sparrow sect was not bad, it was impossible for a disciple like him to carry so many saint crystals around at all times. You don't even have a trivial 1,000,000 saint crystals, yet you want to buy a pass from Brother Yang? Did you eat too much lard and lose your mind? Yang Kai glanced at Wei Guchang in surprise. He suddenly discovered that although this guy appeared to be gentle and upright on the surface, he was actually filled with evil intentions. Sure enough, one couldn't judge a book by its cover. Yang Kai couldn't help wondering what kind of person this guy was when he was alone with Dong Xian'er. Yang Kai guessed that a good and quiet girl like Dong Xian'er would definitely be eaten by him. Yin Zhenzhong's nostrils flared as a look of unbearable rage appeared on his face, seemingly wanting to fight a good fight with Wei Guchang. Even if he was killed, it was better than standing here and being humiliated wantonly. Some of the other Blue Sparrow sect disciples cast pleading eyes not far away. Over there, the second-order origin returning realm old man who had led the Blue Sparrow sect disciples here stood there with an ugly look on his face. Although he noticed the pleading eyes of his sect's disciples, he didn't show any intention to help. Not to mention that Blue Sparrow sect was in the wrong in the first place. The ones involved in this conflict were all young people, so an old man like him running over would be breaking the rules. Blue Sparrow sect had an origin returning realm master, but Shadow Moon Hall didn't. If he really dared to come over, it would only make the situation worse. So, even if he was angry, he could only stand there and watch from afar, not wanting to intervene at will. "Then how many saint crystals do you have?" Wei Guchang suddenly changed the subject. Yin Zhenzhong turned his head to look at his fellow disciples and asked a few more questions before dejectedly saying, 500,000. Wei Guchang turned his eyes to Yang Kai, but Yang Kai simply said indifferently, 500,000 it is, it's barely enough to make up for the trauma in my heart. Yang Kai naturally didn't care about a trivial 500,000 saint crystals, but since these people from Blue Sparrow sect dared to provoke him, they had to pay a certain price. The fact that he didn't kill them was already the best result. As for the other party's face, if Wei Guchang didn't care, how could Yang Kai care? When Yin Zhenzhong brought his junior brother here to force him to sell his pass, did he ever care about his face or wishes? If it weren't for him having some ability, if it were any other cultivator from a small family, Yin Zhenzhong would have already succeeded. Then 500,000 it is, Hurry up! Wei Guchang shouted in a dissatisfied tone. Only Master Brother Yang is magnanimous enough to settle this with a trivial 500,000. If it were me, I wouldn't be Wei Guchang if I didn't rip off your pant. As soon as he finished speaking, Wei Guchang's face suddenly changed slightly. Dong Xian's small hand had unknowingly pinched the soft flesh on his waist, causing her face to blush slightly as she said, "Can you not say that? They have many female disciples." Not only did Dong Xian blush, but the dozen or so female disciples of Blue Sparrow sect also blushed, all of them glaring at Wei Guchang with extreme resentment. Blue Sparrow sect had 30 people, so after a long time, they were only able to gather 500,000 saint crystals. After all, everyone had come to the Liu Yang sand field, a place filled with dangers, so naturally, none of them had brought too many saint crystals with them. These saint crystals were all for the purpose of restoring themselves in the Liu Yang sand field. Once the 500,000 saint crystals were handed over to Yang Kai, Yin Zhenzhong and the others left with their tails between their legs. Gutless rats. Wei Guchang looked at the departing backs of this group of people and shook his head disdainfully. Enough, let bygones be bygones, don't pay attention to them anymore. Dong Xian said softly, changing the subject at the right time, didn't you bring some fine jade liquid to entertain Brother Yang this time? Since it's still early, you might as well take it out. If junior sister hadn't mentioned it, I would have almost forgotten. Wei Guchang laughed and patted his head, the ring on his hand flashing brilliantly as he took out some antique tables and chairs, arranged them in front of him, and enthusiastically invited Yang Kai to sit down before saying, "I just inquired with Martial Uncle Wang and Martial Uncle Yang, and both of them said that there should still be 3 days before the opening of the Liu Yang sand field. On top of that, Elder Qian hasn't come yet, so we might as well drink while waiting." Good, Yang Kai smiled and nodded. Naturally he wouldn't refuse the kindness of others. The so-called fine jade liquid was taken out by Wei Guchang and arranged into 2 small jars. Once the seals were unsealed, a rich wine fragrance immediately spread out and poured into Yang Kai's nostrils. Dong Xian took out 2 plates of spirit fruits from her space ring. These spirit fruits were crystal clear and didn't seem to be ordinary things. Yang Kai didn't know much about wine, so when Wei Guchang handed one to him, he accepted it and drank it. After drinking it, he discovered that this was a kind of spirit wine, similar to the 1,000 safflower wine brewed by Tongxian Realm's Soaring Heaven sect, which had the effect of strengthening one's body and improving one's cultivation. However, this fine jade liquid was of a much higher grade than the 1,000 safflower wine brewed by Feiyu Martial Uncle. After all, this was star territory, so the materials available here were of higher grade and rarer quality. After taking a sip of this wine, Yang Kai immediately felt his Saint Qi circulate faster. This wine was like a spiritual liquid that penetrated into his body and lay dormant in his physique, seemingly waiting for the right moment to erupt. Wei Guchang took a big gulp, a satisfied expression appearing on his face before explaining to Yang Kai, "This Wei brewed this fine jade liquid a long time ago when I was on an adventure. It can be said that on all of Shadowed Star, there is no one else who can brew it except this Wei. Yang Kai, don't underestimate this thing. Although it isn't very strong, it has a long-term restorative effect. If you drink this jar now, it will help Brother Yang restore his Saint Qi for at least half a month." Listening to his words, Kai Yang immediately understood that his previous conjecture was correct. The wine was indeed waiting for the right moment to erupt. Hurriedly, he said, "I don't know much about wine. Letting me drink such a good thing is a bit of a waste of heaven's gift." Wei Guchang laughed. "No matter how good something is, if no one can share it, it's not a good thing. Xian is not good at drinking, and this Wei doesn't have many like-minded friends in Shadow Moon Hall. Now that I've met Brother Yang and can share a good time with him here, it's a great blessing. Brother Yang, don't say such things, you're not giving this Wei any face." Yang Kai didn't know whether he was being sincere or because of Qian Tong's instructions, but in any case, Wei Guchang seemed to be getting along well with Yang Kai now. "Then I won't be polite." Yang Kai laughed heartily and imitated Wei Jiuchang's actions, taking a big gulp of wine, causing Wei Jiuchang to cry out in agreement. Dong Xian sat quietly to the side with a happy smile on her face, watching Wei Guchang and Yang Kai drink one mouthful after another, making her look even more beautiful. Yang Kai didn't know if it was because of the wine or because he was reminded of the scene, but he secretly thought that if Su Yang or Xia Ningchang were here at this moment, they would definitely be like Dong Xiana, right? They would all sit quietly by his side. For these women, as long as they could be with the man they loved, even if the sky fell, they wouldn't frown. Chapter 1173. About half a day later, Qian Tong led the 200 or so people to the vicinity of the Liuyang sandfield. After hurriedly informing his disciples and the cultivator who had followed him, he went off to find the two origin returning realm masters from Shadow Moon Hall. As if everyone had discussed this beforehand, with the arrival of the people from Shadow Moon Hall, a large number of cultivator continued to arrive, each one looking for a place where no one else was present, either huddling together or gathering in groups of 3 or 5. Those who huddled together were all disciples from great forces, while those who gathered in groups of 3 or 5 were from small families and small sects. The entire periphery of Liuyang Sandfield was clearly divided. In less than a day, the number of cultivator who had gathered here had reached more than 2,000. There should still be some who hadn't arrived yet, otherwise, the number would have been even higher. Wei Guchang and Dong Xiana were also squeezed in the middle of the disciples of Shadow Moon Hall, surrounded by nearly 70 people. Wei Guchang wore a serious expression as he spoke to his fellow disciples. The Saint King realm men and women all nodded in agreement. Yang Kai didn't find any disciples from Thunder Typhoon Sect, Heaven Battling Union, or Colored Glass Sect here, so he figured they should have entered from another entrance. This was because there was more than one entrance to Liuyang Sandfield. According to Wei Guchang, there were a total of 4 entrances in all directions. The great forces had all chosen to enter from the nearest entrance, so they weren't all gathered in one place. Compared with the liveliness of the others, Yang Kai sat cross-legged alone in a remote location. No one came to find trouble with him. Those who had seen the power of him and Wei Guchang before naturally didn't dare to provoke him again. Those who had come later seemed to realize that Yang Kai wasn't someone to be trifled with and didn't dare approach him. On the other hand, the cultivator from a small family was always surrounded by disciples from great forces. The purpose of these people was self-evident. They wanted to buy a pass from these small family cultivators. However, now that more and more people had arrived, these disciples from great forces didn't dare to bully others like Yin Jian had done before. All of them tried to persuade others with kind words and paid a sincere price. Some small family cultivator actually gave up on entering the Liuyang Sandfield and instead sold their passes to these people. There were also some people who were determined to enter the Liuyang Sandfield in search of benefits and opportunities, making the disciples from great forces who gathered around them unable to succeed no matter how hard they tried. When Kai Yang's eyes swept over a certain place, he suddenly paused. Letting out a soft cry of surprise, he slowly stood up and walked over. In that direction, there were 2 elderly men. They both had bitter smiles on their faces as they stood where they were. There were also a few people gathered around them, just like the people from the other small clans. Those people were taking turns to persuade them, enticing them with benefits, trying to buy the guild card from their hands. 150,000, 150,000 Saint Crystals. I can't go any higher. Go ask if this price is fair. 150,000 Saint Crystals is not a small number for us. What do 2 seniors think? If you think it's enough, then we have a deal. A middle-aged man said earnestly. Although his cultivation was the same as these 2 old men, 3rd Order Saint King, he was still a bit older. Moreover, now that they had a request, it didn't matter if they called them seniors. One of the 2 old men cupped his fists gently and said with a wry smile, "Several seniors, it's not that we don't want to give you face. It's just that we haven't seen what these passes look like yet. Our passes are in the hands of Shadow Moon Hall's Elder Qian and have not been issued yet." "That doesn't matter." The middle-aged man smiled heartily. "They haven't been issued yet, but they should be issued soon. You just need to hand them over to me when you get your passes and I'll give you the Saint Crystals first." The middle-aged man spoke with great sincerity and really began to count the Saint Crystals. The two elderly men looked at each other with a helpless expression. 150,000 Saint crystals was indeed a huge sum of money for them, but in comparison, they were more willing to enter the Liu Yang sandfield. Inside, they might die, but there was also a chance they could gain a great deal and break through to the origin returning realm. They were old and had children, so their greatest wish in life was to break through to the origin returning realm before they died. For this wish, what harm was there in dying? They really didn't want to sell their passes. Moreover, this was a rare opportunity to enter the Liu Yang sandfield, and it was only by chance that the two of them would be able to enter. If they didn't seize this opportunity, they wouldn't be able to rest in peace. However, the middle-aged man was already counting the Saint crystals, so refusing now would only anger the other party. Although the two of them had come here with Shadow Moon Hall, they had no friendship with the people of Shadow Moon Hall. On the contrary, Elder Qian didn't see them as pleasing to the eye and hadn't caused them any trouble. Giving them 2 spots to enter the Liu Yang sandfield was already an act of mercy, so how could the two of them possibly care about such trivial matters? Just as they were feeling anxious though, a familiar voice suddenly sounded in their ears. "What's wrong? Is someone trying to force a sale again?" This voice contained a hint of sarcasm, causing the middle-aged man who was counting the Saint crystals to look towards the source of the voice coldly. After seeing the face of this newcomer, he immediately cupped his fists with a smile and said cautiously, "This friend, I am not as arrogant and despotic as those people from Blue Sparrow sect. I won't force you to buy a pass from these 2 seniors, but I'm willing to pay 150,000 Saint crystals. You can ask around and see if this price is fair." The middle-aged man smiled apologetically as he quickly explained, feeling bitter in his heart, wondering why this guy had suddenly come over to intervene. Did he have some kind of relationship with these 2 old men? A day ago, the scene of Yang Kai and Wei Guchang dealing with Yin Jianzhong had been witnessed by this middle-aged man from beginning to end, so he naturally knew that Yang Kai, a first-order Saint King, was not someone to be trifled with. If he really became angry, it wouldn't be 150,000 Saint crystals that could be settled, but 500,000. 500,000. The middle-aged man couldn't help trembling just thinking about it. Yang Kai. After the 2 old men saw Yang Kai, they immediately called out cautiously with embarrassed expressions. "Foreign Elder Chang, Foreign Elder Hao." Yang Kai cupped his fists to them and greeted them. Yang Kai knew these 2, otherwise, he wouldn't have come over to meddle in their business. One was Chang Chi and the other was Haoan, both foreign elders of the Haiku family. The former had spent several months with Yang Kai in Starfield, while the latter was the one Wu Yi had always admired. Wu Yi often said that in the Haiku family, these 2 foreign elders treated her the best. In addition to these 2, there was also a female foreign elder named Huang Huan who had a good relationship with her. This turned out to be true. When the Haiku family's patriarch Yi Yen went to the city lord's mansion to invite a master to deal with Yang Kai, these 3 foreign elders used different methods to send Wu Yi a message, telling her to leave Dragon Cave Mountain as soon as possible to avoid disaster. Although it was the Haiku family that faced disaster in the end, the friendship between these 3 still made Wu Yi feel grateful. These days, from time to time, she would mention the 3 of them. Unfortunately, Huang Huan had disappeared after leaving the Haiku family. No one knew where she had gone. Chang Chi and Haoan had remained in the Haiku family and occasionally contacted Wu Yi. The awkward expressions on their faces were obviously because of their identities. Yang Kai and the Haiku family were not on good terms, so they still used the title of foreign elders of the Haiku family for fear that Yang Kai would cause them trouble. So when they saw Yang Kai in Heavenly Fate City's Space Array Hall, they didn't dare to come up and greet him. Firstly, they were afraid, and secondly, they felt embarrassed. But now, seeing Yang Kai actually take the initiative to salute them, the 2 of them immediately understood that they were measuring the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a villain. Yang Kai didn't hold a grudge against them at all. Yang Kai certainly didn't hold a grudge against them. The Haiku family incident was simply because the patriarch named Yi Yen didn't have eyes. Yang Kai still had a good impression of Chang Chi and Haoan, so if Wu Yi cared about them, these 2 were worthy of his help. "He wants to buy your entry passes?" Yang Kai asked. "Yes," Chang Chi nodded, his expression becoming more natural. He offered 150,000 saint crystals? Yang Kai asked again. The two nodded again. The middle-aged man smiled awkwardly and said, "Friend, you see, I didn't lie. A price of 150,000 saint crystals is indeed not low. What do you think?" Yang Kai didn't pay attention to the middle-aged man and instead turned to Chang-Chi and Haoan. If the two of them intended to sell their entry passes, Yang Kai naturally wouldn't intervene. After all, entering this place was very dangerous, but if they didn't want to, the middle-aged man wouldn't be able to succeed. Yang Kai felt that it would be better for them to sell their entry passes. Although 150,000 saint crystals wasn't much in his opinion, to Chang-Chi and Haoan it was not a small fortune. They wouldn't have to risk their lives and would be able to obtain saint crystals, so why not? To Yang Kai's surprise, Chang-Chi and Haoan looked at each other and shook their heads firmly. "We don't want to sell, we want to enter the Liu Yang sandfield." Yang Kai looked at them in surprise before turning to the middle-aged man and saying, "Friend, did you hear? These two seniors of mine don't want to sell their entry passes." I heard. The middle-aged man nodded repeatedly before smiling apologetically. "Then I won't disturb you any longer, farewell." Saying so, he quickly left with his fellow sect brothers. After they left, Chang-Chi and Haoan breathed a sigh of relief as they stared at Yang Kai in surprise. They had arrived late and hadn't seen the scene of Blue Sparrow sect's disciples being humiliated, so they naturally didn't know why this middle-aged man was so afraid of Yang Kai, even sending him away with just a few words. "Two foreign elders, please come this way, there are too many people here so it's not convenient to talk." Yang Kai beckoned to them and walked towards his previous resting place. Chang-Chi and Haoan felt a mix of emotions, some gratitude, some embarrassment, but still followed behind Yang Kai. A moment later, the three of them were far away from the noisy crowd and arrived at a secluded place. Not paying any attention, they all sat down cross-legged. Chapter 1174. After all, Chang-Chi had been with Yang Kai for a long time, so his expression quickly recovered and he asked with a smile, "Are there many things you don't understand?" "Yes," Yang Kai nodded. "Why did the two of you come from the Haiku family?" It was precisely because there were many things Yang Kai didn't understand that he had brought these two here to ask them about the situation. Entering the Flowing Flame Sandfield was an opportunity that only appeared once every 400 years. The Haiku family was a small family and only had 2 or 3 spots at most. Such an opportunity should have been given to the elders or even the patriarch of the Haiku family in person. In any case, it was impossible for a foreign elder like Chang-Chi to come. Chang-Chi sighed and said, "None of them wanted to come. Otherwise, how could 2 old men like us be so lucky? How come no one came?" Yang Kai was stunned. Haoan smiled and explained, "After the last incident, the Haiku family is no longer welcomed by Shadow Moon Hall. From the patriarch to the ordinary disciples, every day everyone in the family is in a state of panic. Many foreign elders have even left the Haiku family, leaving only me and old Chang. The elders are also in retreat and don't dare to go out easily. Are they afraid of me?" Yang Kai suddenly understood. "More or less," Chang-Chi nodded. "Of course, they are afraid that you will seek them out to settle accounts. The Haiku family has already given up a large part of its properties and Yi Yen is doing his best to shrink the family's strength, calling back all the family's disciples and forcing them to enter retreat. Coupled with Shadow Moon Hall's disdain for the family, life in the family is becoming more and more difficult. Now, in the entire Haiku family, besides me and Brother Hao, no one is willing to go out, and no one dares to." Yang Kai couldn't help smiling. He hadn't expected Patriarch Yi Yen of the Haiku family to be so cautious. Even if Yi Yen had provoked him before, out of respect for Wu Yi, Yang Kai had long since decided not to bother with him and had no intention of seeking revenge against the Haiku family. How could he have known that Yi Yen was now treading on thin ice? However, they deserved it. Yang Kai wouldn't find trouble with them, but he wouldn't pity them either. Elder Qian was kind enough to give my Haiku family 2 spots to enter the Liu Yang sandfield, so Brother Hao and I rushed over. Chang-Chi continued, "If Brother Hao and I don't break through, we won't have many years left to live." I just want to enter the Liuyang Desert to find some opportunities to break through, and see if I can fulfill my promise with the family head. Promise? Yang Kai frowned. What patriarch means is that now that the entire family is in retreat, there is no need for us to offer anything. As long as we can hand over half of the benefits we obtained from Liuyang Sandfield, we can leave the Haiku family and find another way out. Yang Kai's expression turned cold. Is he bullying an honest man? The other foreign elders left without a word, and Yi Yan didn't mention any conditions, but when it was Chang Chi and Howen's turn, they had to hand over half of the gains they obtained from the flowing flame sandfield. Yi Yan's calculations were quite good. He didn't need his own family members to take risks, perhaps they could even obtain some good supplies. If this wasn't bullying an honest man, what was? At this moment, Yang Kai became more and more disgusted with Yi Yan. Chang Chi and Howen were also quite strange. The other foreign elders had all left, so why did they stay? On top of that, they had made such an unreasonable agreement with Yi Yan. Seemingly seeing Yang Kai's doubts, Chang Chi explained with some sadness, Brother Hao and I are the family's foreign elders. We have received many benefits from the family over the years, so leaving like this really makes us feel uneasy, so the two of us agreed to the patriarch's request. Yang Kai slowly shook his head. Although he didn't agree with their approach, the loyalty of these two made Yang Kai admire them greatly. If it weren't for the word loyalty lingering in their hearts, they wouldn't have agreed to this condition. His brow furrowed, Yang Kai asked, if the two of you can safely return from Liuyang Sandfield, where do you plan on going? Chang Chi and Howen looked at each other and slowly shook their heads. The two of us have spent most of our lives in the Haiku family. Once we leave the family, we really don't know where to go. Third order Saint Kings aren't high, but they aren't low either. The key is that the two of us are already quite old, so I'm afraid there won't be many places that will accept us. They didn't have any children, so naturally, there was no place they could seek refuge. Yang Kai smiled, if the two of you don't mind, how about settling down on Dragon Cave Mountain? Wu Yi and Yu Feng often talk about you, and there are many disciples who originally belonged to the Haiku family there. With the two of you there, those little brats should be obedient. Chang Chi and Howen's eyes lit up, the former exclaiming in disbelief, can we go? Of course, it's not a restricted area, Junior is more than happy to welcome you, Yang Kai laughed. The two foreign elders' faces flushed with excitement as their beards trembled, Chang Chi stuttering, how could we accept this? It was obvious that he was very interested in going to Dragon Cave Mountain. Today's Dragon Cave Mountain was no longer the same as it used to be. The mountain peaks were shrouded in clouds and the world energy aura was extremely dense, enough to be used as a spirit land for the establishment of a sect. As time passed, the world energy aura there would only become richer and richer. There's nothing to be embarrassed about, none of us are outsiders. When you go there, you can also take some time to guide the cultivation of those disciples. The two foreign elders looked at each other, got up at the same time, cupped their fists, and said in unison, if that's the case, it would be impolite of us to refuse. Chang Chi then added, if we can return safely this time, our 2 old lives will be sold to little brother. Senior is too serious. 2 seniors being alive is more important than anything else. Yang Kai quickly asked them to sit down before continuing to ask, I wonder if 2 seniors have made any preparations to enter the Liuyang Sandfield. We have made some preparations, but I don't know if they will be of any use, Howen sighed. Howen sighed, Brother Chang and I spent all of our life savings and finally managed to purchase a Saint King grade high-rank ice attribute defensive artifact. In addition to that, there were also some healing pills, but we couldn't prepare anything else. This was where people differed from one another. A Saint King grade high-rank artifact usually cost between 30,000 and 40,000 Saint crystals. Even if the current era was special and ice attribute defensive artifacts were expensive, at most one would only cost 50,000 to 60,000 Saint crystals. These 2 foreign elders had exhausted their life savings. However, these Saint crystals were not worth mentioning to Yang Kai. After thinking about it for a moment, Yang Kai took out 8 jade bottles from his space ring and handed them to each of them, explaining, 1 bottle is for healing, 2 bottles are for restoring Saint Chi, and 1 bottle is for resisting the heat. Keep them for yourselves. The pills used to resist the heat were snow and ice pills. Yang Kai had refined a total of 2 bottles, and now he had given them both to them. The 2 of them were about to refuse when Yang Kai added, I have a lot of these things, so don't refuse. Chang-Chi and Howen exchanged a glance and gratefully accepted the 4 bottles of pills silently, some tears even appearing in their old eyes. At this moment, they couldn't help feeling a little touched. Both of them had spent most of their lives in the Haiku family and had devoted most of their lives to it, but now Yi Yen wanted to drive them away and even put forward such conditions. However, when it came to Yang Kai, he didn't even blink an eye and took out 8 bottles of pills. The contrast was like the difference between heaven and earth. Chang-Chi and Howen suddenly felt that leaving the Haiku family and following Yang Kai wasn't necessarily a bad thing, the sadness and loneliness they had been feeling these past few days suddenly sweeping away. These saint crystals, take them as well. I heard that in the flame area, it is impossible to circulate one's secret art to absorb world energy. This world energy contains a kind of fire poison that if absorbed into one's body, it will cause great harm to anyone. All recovery can only rely on saint crystals and pills. Yang Kai took out another ring and handed it to the 2 of them. This time, they didn't refuse and Chang-Chi happily accepted it. After sweeping it with his divine sense slightly, he immediately paled and exclaimed, this is too much. The space ring Yang Kai gave them was the one Yin Jian had given him a day ago, and it contained a total of 500,000 saint crystals. Chang-Chi had never seen so many saint crystals in his life and was so frightened that he almost threw his ring away. Yang Kai waved his hand and said, I still have more saint crystals, take them first. If you can't use them all up, take them back and use them slowly. Consider them a deposit for me, inviting the 2 of you to settle down on Dragon Cave Mountain. Yang Kai suddenly had an idea. Dragon Cave Mountain was now under the care of Qian Tong and was protected by the spirit array arranged by Yang Yang, so it was extremely safe. However, the combat power of the people here was still a weakness. Among all of them, besides Yang Kai himself, who could be regarded as a valiant fighter, the others weren't worth mentioning. Wu Yi was just a first-order Saint King, and although her aptitude was good, she still needed a lot of time to grow. Chang-Chi and Howen were already third-order Saint Kings, so if they could break through to the origin returning realm, Dragon Cave Mountain's safety would be another layer of protection. An origin returning realm cultivator could use Sha, a power that even Yang Kai had a headache dealing with. Yang Kai had recruited them to Dragon Cave Mountain because Wu Yi had a good relationship with them and their loyalty was unparalleled. On the other hand, Yang Kai also wanted to add some powerful cultivator to Dragon Cave Mountain. The 2 foreign elders had been stuck at the third-order Saint King realm for many years, but because of their aptitude, they had been unable to break through. If they were given an origin condensing pill at this time, they would definitely be able to break through their current shackles. However, the emerald silk grass required to refine origin condensing pills seemed to be very rare. Yang Kai only had 2 stalks before, but they had already been used up. It seemed that after entering the Liu Yang sandfield, Yang Kai would have to go to the treasure area to see if he could find some emerald silk grass. If he could obtain some, that would be best, but if he couldn't, he could still purchase it. In any case, Yang Kai didn't lack saint crystals right now. After much persuasion, Chang-Chi and Howen finally accepted the ring. Yang Kai then began to explain to them what he had heard from Wei Guchang about Liu Yang sandfield. Although Chang-Chi and Howen had also obtained some information in this regard, it wasn't as complete as what Yang Kai had told them, so they listened attentively, not daring to miss anything. Chapter 1175. Yang Kai was originally wondering if he could let Chang-Chi and Howen follow the other Shadow Moon Hall disciples. After all, if everyone moved together, their safety would be increased by a lot. Although it felt rather out of place to have 2 half-grown old men sandwiched between all those young and beautiful girls, but at times, age was also a synonym for experience and experience. Their powers were not weak and they might not be unable to help the people from the Shadow Moon Palace. When he proposed this idea, both Chang-Chi and Howen shook their heads and refused. They were not worried that they would not fit in because of the age difference between them and the Shadow Moon Hall disciples. Instead, since they were determined to enter the Liu Yang Desert to find their own opportunities, they naturally could not move together with others. If they did, they would have to share any benefits with others. The two of them did not even plan to stay together. They were prepared to split up after entering the Liu Yang Desert. They were right. Yang Kai thought about it and did not insist. 2 days later, the Qian Tong came in a hurry and distributed everyone's pass. He also gave everyone a small secret treasure called a yuan magnetic pointer. The Liu Yang Desert was too big, and there were no sun, moon, or stars inside. Once inside, it was impossible to distinguish the direction. This yuan magnetic pointer was used to help people identify the direction. Wei Guchang had mentioned it to Yang Kai before. After receiving it, Yang Kai immediately knew how to use it after fiddling with it a few times. This pointer was very delicate. No matter how it was turned, it would always point to a specific location. With the help of this thing, there was no need to worry about getting lost in the Liu Yang Desert. Yang Kai carefully put away the yuan magnetic pointer and sat cross-legged with Chang Qi and Howen to rest. As time passed, the dark red energy curtain covering the Liu Yang Desert began to fade at a clear and discernible speed. Moreover, there were waves of extremely unstable energy fluctuations coming from inside the Liu Yang Desert. After noticing this, everyone stood up. They also understood that the forbidden area was about to open. They could not help but rub their hands together in excitement. Many people looked at the Liu Yang Desert expectantly, secretly imagining what benefits they would obtain inside. Only the return to Void stage powerhouses who had led the team here wore worried expressions. Because they knew better than anyone else the dangers of the Liu Yang Desert. Many of these return to Void Realm cultivators had personally ventured into the Void Realm 400 years ago and only returned after experiencing many hardships. Those return to Void Realm cultivators who had not ventured into the Void Realm had read about it in the ancient records of their respective sects. Although they were worried, none of the origin returning realm masters showed their emotions. Because if they wanted to obtain benefits, they had to pay a certain price. Even if the price was thousands of lives, as long as their core disciples were fine, they didn't care. Origin returning realm masters continued to fly over the heads of the crowd, shouting loudly and cheering for these saint kings who were about to enter the Liu Yang Desert. Of course, they did not forget to remind them to be careful, try not to get into conflicts with others, and to show mutual respect. It was unknown how many people listened to this nonsense, but where there was profit, there would be disputes. Every time the Liu Yang Desert opened, 20 to 30% of the people who entered would be killed because of fighting over treasures. Half a day later, the unstable energy fluctuations coming from the Liu Yang Desert suddenly subsided. Immediately, the light-colored energy curtain also stabilized after a series of dazzling changes. It was obvious that in a certain territory, the light red energy curtain had become even lighter and looked like an open door. The Liu Yang Desert had officially opened. The elders of the various sects shouted with all their might as they rushed to the entrance one after the other. Almost 3,000 people rushed to the entrance in an instant. More than a dozen third-order origin returning realm masters stood there, glaring at them, but when they saw these saint kings rush over, they all released their sha. The entire world seemed to freeze as all the Saint King realm masters froze in place, struggling to even move. Those with poor endurance paled and their clothes were soaked in sweat. The feeling of being enveloped by sha was very disgusting. It was a feeling of not being able to control one's life or death, as if their lives were in the hands of the owner of this sha. What are you fighting for? An old man with a ruddy complexion flew up into the sky, swept his eyes around with dignity, and shouted, "All of you, line up for this old master and enter one by one. Anyone who dares to fight for a spot will be immediately disqualified." After listening to this old man, everyone began to line up obediently. Fortunately, the entrance was not too narrow and the line was directly divided into 5 lines. According to the old man's requirements, everyone who entered the Liu Yang Desert had to hold up their entry pass in front of them for the many origin returning realm masters to inspect. Those without entry passes would not be able to pass. Brother Yang, Yang Kai had just brought Chang Chi and Howen to the end of a line when he heard Wei Guchang calling out to him. Looking towards the source of the voice, Yang Kai saw Wei Jiu Chang and Dong Xian'er standing in a line near him. Behind them were all disciples from Shadow Moon Hall. "Brother Wei," Yang Kai smiled at him. "Brother Yang, once we enter, I will send a message to everyone through the communication artifact. If you can receive my message, it would be best if you could act together with this Wei. I have a few junior brothers and junior sisters with me. If we work together, we can pass through the flame area as soon as possible," Wei Guchang said as he pointed to the people around him. These men and women also seemed to be core disciples of Shadow Moon Hall. Even if their status was not as high as Wei Guchang and Dong Xian'er, it should not be too far off. However, they were not as perceptive as Wei Guchang and Dong Xian'er, so after hearing Wei Guchang's words, they all showed puzzled looks and some reluctance. In their minds, if Yang Kai, a First-Order Saint King, really acted with them, he would definitely drag them down. They were all core disciples of Shadow Moon Hall, so naturally, they were unwilling to bring along a stranger like Yang Kai. Yang Kai nodded lightly and said indifferently, "Good." Wei Guchang seemed to have seen through Yang Kai's perfunctory attitude and did not say anything more. When he was chatting with Yang Kai 2 days ago, he had noticed that Yang Kai seemed to want to act alone. The line passed through quickly. After all, there were more than a dozen Third-Order Origin returning Realm Masters standing on both sides of the line to check their entry passes. With a sweep of their divine senses, they were allowed to pass through one after another. The number of Saint Kings decreased at a speed visible to the naked eye. Soon, it was Yang Kai's turn. Holding his entry pass through the divine senses of the many Origin returning Realm Masters, he immediately heard Qian Tong's voice, "Nephew Yang, you must be careful and return safely." Yang Kai nodded gently to Qian Tong before passing through the entrance directly. A slight sense of dizziness washed over him, and by the time Yang Kai reacted, he found himself in an extremely hot environment. From all directions, waves of heat washed over him one after another. The ground under his feet was a kind of reddish-brown soil that had been baked at high temperatures all year round. Cracks spread across the ground like a spider's web. These cracks varied in size, some as large as ravines while others as wide as canyons. As far as the eye could see, there was not a single blade of grass growing, with many rocky hills and slopes obstructing one's line of sight. Is this the flame area? Yang Kai did not use his Saint Chi to protect his body, but he still felt his skin tingle from the heat. Even with his powerful physique, he could still feel pain, let alone the other Saint Kings who entered this place. If they were slightly weaker, they would immediately have to use their Saint Chi to protect their bodies to resist the omnipresent heat. The world energy here contained a strange fire poison that could not be absorbed at all. As a result, the cultivator could only use his Saint Chi and pills to restore his strength. If he could not make ends meet, he would eventually run out of strength, and when that time came, he would be in danger. However, this slight tingling sensation was not a big problem for Yang Kai. He could even withstand dangers like the void storm with his physical body, let alone this kind of heat. This was only the outermost area, and Yang Kai believed that it would be even hotter if he went further in. There was not a single person to be seen, and the cultivator who had entered before had been teleported to some unknown place. Others could not feel the strangeness of this place, but as soon as Yang Kai entered, he noticed that the space here seemed to be a little unstable. It was because of this instability that the cultivator who had passed through the same entrance would appear in different positions in the Liu Yang sand field. In front of him, a light red ribbon of fire attribute Qi slowly floated by. Looking around, Yang Kai discovered that there was a lot of this fire attribute Qi that had already condensed into a solid substance. Each and every one of these fire attribute Qi was like a spirit snake dancing in the air, looking very beautiful. Just as he was observing, a burst of space fluctuations suddenly appeared nearby, and immediately, 2 figures appeared, one to his left and one to his right. They were the 2 cultivator who had passed through the entrance after him. Both of them were men, and before they had time to observe their surroundings, their faces changed when they felt the heat of this place. One of them immediately circulated his Saint Chi to protect himself, but the other did not do so. His strength was obviously higher, but he soon began to sweat profusely. Yang Kai frowned and found that the cultivator who was circulating his Saint Chi to protect himself was actually wearing the clothes of the Shadow Moon Hall, so he should be a disciple of the Shadow Moon Hall. After the two stabilized themselves, they began to look around. After discovering that there were two other people here, the expression of the disciple of the Shadow Moon Hall changed slightly, especially when he saw Yang Kai. A strange look flashed in his eyes. However, he had no intention of greeting Yang Kai and directly left the place, moving very quickly. The other person, however, looked at Yang Kai thoughtfully, then suddenly grinned and said, "Friend, are you interested in traveling together with this one?" "Not interested," Yang Kai replied indifferently. He did not even want to talk to Wei Guchang, let alone this guy of unknown origin. The man did not seem to expect Yang Kai to refuse so bluntly. He pinched his nose awkwardly and did not continue to pester him. He cupped his fists to Yang Kai and left in another direction. Chapter 1176. After walking far away, the man who had invited Yang Kai to accompany him glanced back, a strange look appearing on his face as he muttered to himself, "A First-Order Saint King can stand here without using his Saint Chi to protect himself? It's really strange." Even for him, a Third-Order Saint King, it was a bit difficult for him to cope and his clothes were soon soaked in sweat, but he found that Yang Kai wasn't in such a sorry state, which was why he had invited him. Because he subconsciously felt that Yang Kai wasn't simple. However, the other party seemed a bit unreasonable, so he tactfully didn't say anything. In this kind of place, the more words one spoke, the better. Who knew what kind of personality this First-Order Saint King had? If he provoked the other party, it wouldn't be good for him to fight. The Liu Yang sand field had only opened once every 400 years, so it could be said that there were treasures everywhere, so naturally, he had to seize the opportunity to find them. After he left, Yang Kai stood in place and thought for a while. He felt that the voice of the cultivator who had invited him was a bit familiar, as if he had heard it somewhere before, but Yang Kai was sure he had never met this person before. How could someone he had never met before have heard his voice? After pondering for a moment, Yang Kai stopped thinking about this problem and took out the Yuan magnetic compass from his space ring. The communication artifact that was placed next to the Yuan magnetic compass seemed to have some divine sense fluctuations, so it should be a message from Wei Guchang. Yang Kai took it out and sensed it, and sure enough, not only was there a message from him, but also the divine senses of Dong Xiena and the other disciples of Shadow Moon Hall shuttling back and forth, asking for each other's location before deciding on a meeting place. Yang Kai ignored it and threw the communication artifact back into his space ring before confirming the direction with the Yuan magnetic compass and heading towards the depths of the Liu Yang sand field. About 300 kilometers away from Yang Kai, Wei Guchang stood at the foot of a huge slope. This slope was very conspicuous, and even from a distance, one could see its outline. He and the other core disciples of Shadow Moon Hall had agreed to meet here, so as long as they weren't idiots, they should be able to find this place quickly. Dong Xiena was the closest to him, so after half a cup of tea worth of time, Dong Xiena was the first to arrive. "Brother," Dong Xiena called out happily as she flew over, a light blue halo covering her body that exuded a faint chill, isolating her from the heat. This was the protective effect of the origin-grade low-rank defensive artifact Yang Yang had refined for her. Wei Guchang, like Yang Kai, did not immediately use his artifact or Saint Chi to protect himself. Instead, he simply stood in place, seemingly enjoying this baking heat. Seeing Dong Xiena arrive, he immediately showed a gentle smile. "Brother, the junior brothers and junior sisters who are going to the treasure area with us have all replied, but Brother Yang hasn't. Is he too far away from us, beyond the range of this communication artifact?" Dong Xiena asked with some concern. "Not necessarily." Wei Guchang shook his head. "Our communication artifact was refined by Grandmaster Ji Lin himself, so its range is 500 kilometers. We didn't enter this place too far apart, so even if we were to split up, we should be nearby." Brother Yang not replying, he should have his own plans. "Brother, what you mean is that Brother Yang wants to act alone? He doesn't want to come with us?" Dong Xiena was also an intelligent woman, so after hearing Wei Guchang's words, she immediately understood Yang Kai's plan. Those with ability all like to act alone. Wei Guchang grinned. What about you, brother? Do you also want to act alone, free and easy? Dong Xian'er suddenly asked faintly. Wei Guchang laughed heartily. Brother, I naturally want to go with you. The two of us together, under the moonlight, under the flowers, running amok in this forbidden area, wouldn't that be great? Hearing his nonsense, Dong Xian'er couldn't help but spit, but her small face was still brimming with a happy smile. Wei Guchang coldly snorted, if possible, of course I would want it to be just the two of us, but there's no other way. Martial Uncle Wang and Martial Uncle Yang specially instructed me to take good care of those junior brothers and junior sisters, so I can't just leave them behind. It's funny that when I invited Brother Yang before, they looked dissatisfied. How could they know how strong Brother Yang is? I'd rather travel with Brother Yang than bring these burdens. Being in a sect, there are always some things that don't go your way. Brother, don't worry too much. Dong Xian'er softly comforted. This was her biggest advantage, and also what Wei Guchang liked most about her. She could always comfort him with the right words at the most appropriate time. Every time he was in a bad mood, as long as he said a few words to her, his mood would immediately calm down. Of course I know. Forget it, let's not talk about this. They should be coming soon, and it would be quite sad if they heard it. Wei Guchang smiled and shook his head. He immediately stopped talking about this matter, and instead discussed with Dong Xian'er the direction and route they should take. At this moment, Yang Kai encountered his first fire spirit beast. He originally thought that the fire spirit beast would be the same as the monster beast, and would be easy to find. Since he came in, he had been looking around, wanting to see what was so strange about this thing that only existed in Liuyang Sand, and even more so, he wanted to see what was so special about the fire crystal stone. Who would have thought that he couldn't find any trace of the fire spirit beast? Just as he was looking around, a flame suddenly gushed out from a crack in the ground under his feet. Soon after, a fire spirit beast that looked like a fierce tiger appeared on the scene, shaking its head and swaying its tail. Yang Kai didn't rush to attack, but carefully observed. Indeed, as Wei Guchang had said before, the fire spirit beast's body was illusory, constantly changing, and very strange. Its aura was perfectly concealed by the heat of Liuyang Sand, so even though Yang Kai was very vigilant, Yang Kai didn't notice it until it jumped out from the crack under his feet. This tiger-like fire spirit beast looked very weak, only at the level of a fifth-order monster beast. A fifth-order monster beast was equivalent to an immortal ascension boundary cultivator. It didn't even have a complete body, only a majestic tiger head and half of its body. From the waist down, all that was left was a mass of flame. Yang Kai was disappointed. The tiger-like fire spirit beast took the initiative to attack, but Yang Kai just threw a punch, Saint Qi gushing out from his fist, and directly scattered it. The flame burst, and the tiger-like fire spirit beast disappeared in an instant, leaving behind a dark red, sand-like object that fell from the sky. Yang Kai casually reached out and caught it in his hand. Is this a fire crystal stone? Even though this was the first time he had seen it, Yang Kai recognized at a glance that this was the fire crystal stone Wei Guchang had been talking about so much. However, this thing was simply too small. Although the world energy contained inside was pure enough, the amount it could store was nothing to be proud of. Yang Kai only needed to circulate his Saint Qi casually to absorb all of the energy inside this thing. Shaking his head with some dissatisfaction, Yang Kai estimated that the size of a fire crystal stone should be directly related to the rank of the fire spirit beast. The higher the rank of the fire spirit beast, the larger the fire crystal stone would be. This kind of sand-sized fire crystal stone was only a crystal from a fifth-order fire spirit beast, so sixth-order, seventh-order, and even eighth-order fire spirit beasts might be different. There was no challenge in the outermost flame area, so Yang Kai lost interest in carefully investigating this place. With a single thought, the sound of wind and thunder rang out as a pair of beautiful wings suddenly unfurled behind him. These wings were translucent and had arcs of lightning curling around them. These were the wind and thunder wings that Yang Kai had not used for a long time. When he was on Tongxian realm, the wind and thunder wings had provided him with great help, but since obtaining a flight-type artifact like a star shuttle, the usefulness of the wind and thunder wings had gradually decreased. After arriving at Tongshen territory, Yang Kai had not used the wind and thunder wings again. Yang Kai had not expected that in this kind of place, there would be a need to test them. Pouring his Saint Chi into the wind and thunder wings, Yang Kai's speed suddenly soared as he transformed into a stream of light and disappeared from where he stood. Yang Kai was overjoyed as he found that his guess was correct. Although it was impossible to use a star shuttle in this Liu Yang sand field, and the cultivator could not fly, the wind and thunder wings were not greatly restricted. As long as he did not leave the ground, he would be fine. However, once Yang Kai tried to leave the ground, an infinite pressure would descend from the sky and abruptly suppress him. After testing this a few times, Yang Kai obediently relied on the wind and thunder wings to travel on foot. This forbidden land was very strange. Yang Kai did not know what kind of mysterious world principles it contained, but in any case, there were many restrictions. Along the way, Yang Kai did not encounter a single person, as if he was the only one exploring this huge Liu Yang sand field. Of course, Yang Kai knew that this was just an illusion. The Liu Yang sand field was simply too big. It was a circular territory, and the closer one was to the outside, the wider the perimeter, so the chances of encountering another cultivator were naturally lower. However, as long as one walked deeper in, the elites would gradually gather at the center, and the chances of encountering each other would increase. When that time came, there would likely be more conflicts. Fire spirit beasts were indeed common in the flame area. As Yang Kai hurried along, from time to time, one or two fire spirit beasts of varying levels would emerge from the cracks in the ground, trying to obstruct his progress. There were even some fire spirit beasts that swaggered out and wandered around. Facing these fire spirit beasts, which were equivalent to 5th order or 6th order in strength, Yang Kai really couldn't bring himself to kill them, so he simply ignored them and left. The further he went, the higher the surrounding temperature became. Not only did the temperature cause Yang Kai's skin to sting, but even the fire poison contained in the heat waves became stronger, silently seeping into Yang Kai's body through his pores, affecting his bodily functions and the circulation of his Saint Chi. This fire poison was extremely overbearing. Even if Yang Kai circulated his secret art, he was unable to dissolve it. If too much of it accumulated, it would pose a great danger to anyone, so Yang Kai could only forcibly expel it from his body. As the temperature of the flame area increased and the fire poison raged, Yang Kai had to push his Saint Chi to protect his body, resisting both the heat and the fire poison. Chapter 1177. 3 days later, Yang Kai entered a valley-like area. During these 3 days, he had been on his way, and with the bonus of his wind and thunder wings, his speed was much faster than others. During this time, except for encountering an 8th order fire spirit beast, which he killed with some effort, nothing else happened. The 8th order fire spirit beast's body had already solidified to a certain extent, so when it suddenly emerged from a crack in the ground, it really gave Yang Kai a fright. If not for his quick reaction and the help of his wind and thunder wings, this sneak attack alone would have been enough to injure him. Only now did Yang Kai understand that the real threat of fire spirit beasts was not their strength, but their ability to perfectly blend in with the environment of this Liu Yang desert. As long as they did not take the initiative to appear, a cultivator would not be able to detect them. However, their appearance was always accompanied by a fatal sneak attack. An 8th order fire spirit beast was equivalent to a Saint King, so if it had been any other cultivator, they would have died long ago. However, Yang Kai finally managed to kill it and obtained a fire crystal stone the size of a pigeon's egg. This piece of fire crystal stone was much larger than the first one he obtained, so its value was definitely not low. As long as an alchemist or artifact refiner could perfectly integrate the pure fire energy contained in this fire crystal stone into the pills or artifacts they refined, they could improve the grade and quality of the pills and artifacts they refined. Such a harvest made Yang Kai a little happy, and he couldn't help but want to find another 8th order fire spirit beast to kill. After all, he was an alchemist himself, so this kind of thing would be helpful to him. After entering the valley, Yang Kai's divine sense covered a range of 300 meters around him, lest he encounter another sneak attack from a powerful fire spirit beast. The terrain here was very strange. In all directions, there were barren mountains. The entire valley looked like a huge pit in the ground. The valley was so big that one couldn't see the end of it. There were crisscrossing ravines everywhere in the valley. The large ravines looked like bottomless abysses, which made people shudder. Yang Kai didn't care, and instead urged his wind and thunder wings to continue forward. He had the same idea as Wei Guchang, which was to rush to the treasure area as soon as possible and collect some spirit grasses and spirit herbs before many people entered. Once all the elites from the various major forces entered, there would be less good stuff to collect. Everyone should be in a hurry right now. Yang Kai had the wind and thunder wings, which gave him a huge advantage. Half a day later, Yang Kai had already arrived at the interior of the valley. Surprisingly, he had not encountered a single fire spirit beast in this half a day. Previously, no matter how lucky he was, there would be 1 or 2 fire spirit beasts that recklessly rushed out to block his path every 1 or 2 hours. But now, half a day had passed and there was no trace of any fire spirit beasts, which made him very puzzled. It was as if this valley was a forbidden area for fire spirit beasts and they would not come here. Yang Kai was happy to see this, and continued to move forward. But suddenly, Yang Kai's face changed, and in a flash, he hurriedly dodged to the side. Just now, when he used his divine sense to investigate, he felt an abnormal energy fluctuation. Yang Kai was very familiar with this kind of energy fluctuation. It was the sign of a fire spirit beast rushing out from the cracks in the ground to attack. Sure enough, when he changed his position, several fire spirit beasts of different shapes and levels suddenly rushed out from his original position. Yang Kai didn't want to pay attention to them and just wanted to move forward, but before he could stand firm, the abnormal energy fluctuation appeared again, and the place where it appeared was still under his feet. Yang Kai frowned and changed his position again. This time, the energy fluctuation came from under his feet for the 3rd time. At the same time, in all directions, the entire valley seemed to be boiling, the chaotic energy fluctuating up and down, and flames rushed out from the crisscrossing cracks, transforming into strange fire spirit beasts. The number of flames rushing out from the cracks in the ground was simply too many to count, and there were even more flames flashing in the distance. Yang Kai's complexion finally changed. There seemed to be something wrong with this valley. He never thought that the fire spirit beasts would be so dense, and this place was completely different from what he had imagined. This valley was not a forbidden area for the fire spirit beasts, it was clearly their paradise. Who knew why so many fire spirit beasts had gathered here? In just a dozen breaths of time, Yang Kai was surrounded by fire spirit beasts, all of whom were glaring at him with malicious intent. Yang Kai swept the area with his divine sense and his face sank. Just within a radius of 1,000 feet around him, there were already over 10,000 fire spirit beasts gathered. Although most of these fire spirit beasts were unsightly at the 5th or 6th rank, there were also 7th and 8th rank fire spirit beasts mixed in with them. Even further away from him, there were even more fire spirit beasts rushing over here one after another. Yang Kai felt as if he had inadvertently poked a big hornet's nest, his expression extremely ugly. Not being able to fly meant that he would have to kill his way out of this encirclement. With so many fire spirit beasts, how long would it take him to kill them all? Just as Yang Kai was hesitating, a loud roar rang out and the fire spirit beasts that had gathered around him took the initiative to launch an attack, rushing towards Yang Kai in droves. These beasts bared their fangs and charged towards Yang Kai, some of them even using fire attribute energy to attack. Some of these beasts spat out fireballs from their mouths, while others attacked like fire snakes towards Yang Kai. There were even some that shot out like sharp arrows, their speed extremely fast and the sound of them tearing through the air rang out incessantly. These energy attacks could only be launched by fire spirit beasts that had reached the 7th order. Yang Kai roared as his Saint Chi surged and a long sword covered in demonic flames appeared in his hand. Swinging it forward, a shocking sword wave appeared and all the 5th order and 6th order fire spirit beasts that were struck by this sword wave were reduced to dust and dissipated into the air. Yang Kai waved his hand again and sent out a dozen pitch-black spears filled with demonic flames in all directions. Each spear was incredibly powerful and pierced through the bodies of countless fire spirit beasts before gradually disappearing. Profound heavenly sword, heaven punishing spear, Yang Kai continued to use these two Nine Heavens divine skills, killing the fire spirit beasts that rushed towards him. When others encountered so many fire spirit beasts, even if they were in groups, they could only wait to be killed because there were simply too many of these fire spirit beasts. Even if most of them couldn't withstand a single blow, it would still take a huge amount of energy to kill them all. Perhaps before a cultivator could kill them all, the cultivator would run out of energy and be overwhelmed by these fire spirit beasts. Yang Kai was different. He had never worried about the amount of energy stored in his body. Before, he had stored his yang liquid, but now that his Saint Chi had transformed into demonic flames, all of his strength was stored in his physique. Yang Kai's Saint Chi reserves were hundreds or thousands of times greater than any Saint King Realm Master. Even Origin returning Realm Masters couldn't compare to him. Pouring out his Saint Chi recklessly, Yang Kai made the fire spirit beasts swarming towards him completely understand what it meant to be slaughtered like flies. Soon, Yang Kai furrowed his brow. When such a large number of fire spirit beasts appeared just now, he was really surprised for a moment, but in the next moment, he became excited. Because with so many fire spirit beasts, how many fire crystal stones could he harvest? Even if the fire crystal stones in the bodies of 5th order and 6th order fire spirit beasts were useless, the 7th order and 8th order fire spirit beasts were different. The fire crystal stones in their bodies could definitely be used for alchemy or artifact refining. But now, Yang Kai discovered a strange phenomenon. The fire spirit beasts he killed seemed to be fundamentally different from the fire spirit beasts outside. They didn't have any fire crystal stones in their bodies. After the time it would take to boil a cup of tea, Yang Kai had killed at least 300 5th order and 6th order fire spirit beasts, and even a dozen or so 7th order fire spirit beasts. Strangely, whether they were 5th order, 6th order, or 7th order fire spirit beasts, after their bodies dissipated, not a single fire crystal stone was left behind. Something is wrong. Yang Kai was puzzled, but after slaughtering for a while, he suddenly turned his eyes to an 8th order fire spirit beast not far away. He really wanted to know if this guy's body was the same. The demonic flame sword in his hand swept out in a semicircle and the fire spirit beasts touched by his demonic flame directly collapsed and dissipated. Yang Kai quickly opened a gap in the crowd of fire spirit beasts and rushed straight towards the 8th order fire spirit beast. Before Yang Kai even arrived, a heaven-punishing spear had already shot out. The 8th order fire spirit beast was quite extraordinary and quickly dove into the crowd of fire spirit beasts, using the bodies of its dozen or so companions to resist the attack of the heaven-punishing spear. Not waiting for Yang Kai to launch another attack, it opened its mouth and spat out a fire dragon. Yang Kai didn't dodge and instead pushed his Saint Chi to resist the raging fire dragon. Taking a step forward, Yang Kai arrived in front of the fire dragon and slashed out with his demonic flame sword. This time, the 8th order fire spirit beast was unable to dodge and the sword wave split open a meter-long crack on its head. After the sword wave raged on, the 8th order fire spirit beast let out a whimper and disappeared. Yang Kai searched carefully and found that it really didn't have any fire crystal stones. At this moment, Yang Kai couldn't help having the urge to curse out loud. These countless fire spirit beasts had trapped him here, but after killing them all, there was no harvest at all. This was somewhat intolerable. If he could obtain a large number of fire crystal stones, Yang Kai felt that this slaughter would have been somewhat worthwhile, but with no benefits at all, how could he be in the mood to continue entangling with them here? After a loud roar, a giant black dragon several dozen meters long suddenly emerged from Yang Kai's body. It was condensed from the golden dragon tattoo on Yang Kai's body. However, after injecting Yang Kai's unique Saint Chi, this golden dragon transformed into its current appearance, one that was pitch black and covered in demonic flames. Its pair of dragon eyes were even larger than a human's face, giving it a powerful aura. The giant black dragon shook its head and waved its tail as it rushed into the fire spirit beasts and began a frenzied rampage. The densely packed fire spirit beasts couldn't avoid it in time and were quickly wiped out. At the same time, Yang Kai also took out the purple shield that Yang Yang had refined for him and placed it on his back to resist the attacks of the fire spirit beasts. He also took out the 100 Mountains picture that originally belonged to the Shu family and summoned a series of mountain phantoms from it towards the fire spirit beasts. Yang Kai's strength was much higher than Xu Zhishen's. Xu Zhishen could only summon 6 mountain phantoms back then, but Yang Kai could summon 8 with ease at this moment. Chapter 1178. The 100 Mountains picture was an excellent artifact for one-on-one combat, but it was also very suitable for group attacks. The 8 huge mountain phantoms looked illusory and ethereal, but each one of them had the weight of a mountain. They didn't need to exert any kind of pressure, just the mere fact that they smashed down was enough. After Yang Kai crazily poured his Saint Qi into them, the mountain phantoms began to emit a faint demonic flame aura. For a time, the entire mountain valley was shaken by the mountain phantoms, and the fire spirit beasts rushed over in large groups before disappearing in droves. This was the first time Yang Kai had used the 100 Mountains picture and suddenly found that this artifact was quite useful. At the very least, it was much faster than using his profound heavenly sword and heaven-punishing spear to kill fire spirit beasts. Immediately, he put away his demonic flame sword and focused on releasing the power of the 100 Mountains picture. Hong hong hong. Violent explosions rang out from the mountain valley, deafening everyone's ears. At the same time, in the direction Yang Kai had come from, a group of 3 people appeared at the entrance of the mountain valley. 2 of the 3 were third-order Saint Kings while the other was a first-order Saint King. From the way the 3 of them walked, it was obvious the 2 third-order Saint Kings were sandwiching the first-order cultivator in the middle, seemingly protecting him. When this group arrived in front of the mountain valley, the cultivator walking at the front suddenly stopped, a look of surprise appearing on his face as he stared suspiciously into the mountain valley. Since he didn't move, the 2 people behind him naturally stopped as well. The cultivator at the back remained vigilant, but the short young man sandwiched between them didn't seem to care at all. From time to time, he would look around, as if he wasn't here to adventure in the Liuyang desert but to play. After investigating the mountain valley for the time it would take to brew a cup of tea, the 3 of them didn't show any intention of moving forward. The short young man couldn't help urging the person in front of him, "Xie Yong, what are you looking at? Hurry up and move." The cultivator called Xie Yong heard this and turned back to the young man. "Young master, wait a moment, there seems to be something wrong with this mountain valley." Saying so, he beckoned to the third-order Saint King cultivator at the back of the group. After this cultivator stepped forward, the 2 began to investigate together, whispering to one another from time to time. When the young man saw the serious look on their faces, he coldly snorted in dissatisfaction, "Aren't you making a fuss over nothing? Along the way, we haven't encountered any danger at all. Weren't those fire spirit beasts that jumped out easily killed by this young master? In my opinion, this Liuyang desert doesn't live up to its name at all. The rumors about how dangerous it is are obviously just rumors to scare those who don't know about it. Unfortunately, they can't scare this young master." This young man was none other than Xie Hongwen, who had a grudge with Yang Kai before. The other 2 third-order Saint King cultivator were naturally the cultivator sent by the Xie family to protect him. Qian Tong had specifically told Yang Kai before that these 2 cultivator weren't from Shadow Moon Hall. After listening to Xie Hongwen's words, Xie Yong and the other cultivator exchanged a glance and shook their heads secretly. They also knew that Xie Hongwen was used to living a comfortable life and didn't understand the dangers of the outside world. Coupled with the fact that they hadn't encountered any danger these past few days, Xie Hongwen had underestimated this place. Although they had never entered Liuyang Desert before, since it was one of Shadowed Star's 3 great restricted zones, there must be something strange about it. If it had been someone else who said this, the 2 of them wouldn't have cared at all and underestimated the danger of this place. If they were careless, they would have died, but in the end, they shouldered the heavy responsibility of protecting Xie Hongwen. If Xie Hongwen died because of carelessness, they wouldn't have a good ending when they returned to the Xie family. The other square-faced cultivator felt that it was necessary to explain to Xie Hongwen, so after thinking about it for a moment, he solemnly said, "Young master, this is the outermost area of Liuyang Desert, and we were lucky before. The fire spirit beasts we encountered were only 5th order or 6th order. With young master's strength, killing them was naturally a piece of cake. Hearing this flattery, Xie Hongwen's impatient look finally eased a lot and he put on an arrogant look, as if he was the sole ruler of this world. The cultivator quickly changed the subject and said, "But young master, you must not take this place lightly. In addition to the 5th order or 6th order fire spirit beasts we encountered, there are also 7th order, 8th order." When Xie Hongwen heard this, he narrowed his eyes and stared at the square-faced cultivator, sneering, "Xie Yun, you're underestimating this young master too much. This young master has many artifacts on him and his divine technique is exquisite. Forget about 7th order or 8th order, even if a 9th order fire spirit beast came, what harm would it pose? This young master can still easily kill it." This young master was afraid he wouldn't be able to encounter a high-grade fire spirit beast. "If you can find a few for this young master will kill them for you to see." He couldn't wait to prove himself. Xie Yong and Xie Yun remained calm on the surface, but in their hearts, they were cursing Xie Hongwen to death. They had long heard that Xie Hongwen was an idiot, but only now did they realize that the rumors outside were simply understating the stupidity of this young master. He was just a trivial 1st order Saint King, let alone a 9th order fire spirit beast. Even a 7th order or 8th order one could easily be killed. What was laughable was that he dared to boast so shamelessly. There was no way to reason with an idiot, so Xie Yun and Xie Yong tactfully agreed a few times, much to Xie Hongwen's satisfaction. He no longer held them responsible for staying here and nodded repeatedly, "You can rest assured, as long as this young master can get his revenge this time, when I return, I will definitely have my father write a letter to the patriarch. There will be no shortage of benefits for you." Xie Yun and Xie Yong's eyes lit up as they nodded. The reason they accepted this task was because Xie Hongwen's father, Xie Li, had promised them a huge reward of 300,000 saint crystals each after they completed this task. Otherwise, why would they accompany Xie Hongwen to the Liu Yang sandfield? Moreover, whatever they obtained from the Liu Yang sandfield, the family wouldn't ask them to hand over. Whatever they obtained would belong to them. A few months ago, when this task was delivered to the Xie family, countless Xie family members boiled over and responded to the call of the Xie family patriarch. In the end, it was Xie Yong and Xie Yun who won this task with an absolute advantage. They also knew who Xie Hongwen wanted to seek revenge on, a 1st order Saint King cultivator named Yang Kai. According to Xie Hongwen, Yang Kai was ignorant, arrogant, overbearing, and lustful. Even he couldn't beat him and was only relying on the power of Elder Qian Tong to bully the weak. Xie Yong and Xie Yun certainly didn't believe this. There was no Saint King in this world who couldn't beat Xie Hongwen. Even if it was a cultivator who had just broken through to the Saint King realm, it would be easy for them to win against trash like Xie Hongwen. In the end, the two of them learned the truth from Xie Li. Although the young man named Yang Kai's cultivation was low, his combat power was extraordinary. He was able to kill a 3rd order Saint King cultivator, a so-called genius cultivator. He was an elite who could fight above his own realm. However, Xie Yong and Xie Yun were also elites of the Xie family, so they had absolute confidence in killing a cultivator like Yang Kai. "Do you think that trash didn't take this path?" Xie Hongwen suddenly asked. "How come we've been chasing him for several days and still haven't seen him? Could it be we went in the wrong direction?" Xie Yong grinned and proudly said, "Young master, you can rest assured that he is walking on this path. No one has been able to escape my pursuit." It was precisely because Xie Yong was good at tracking and possessed extraordinary combat power that he was able to stand out from the other Xie family members and successfully take on this task. After determining the location Yang Kai entered, the three of them gathered together through the communication artifact and chased after Yang Kai. "Then how come we didn't find him?" Xie Hongwen asked puzzledly. "Because he entered this mountain valley," Xie Yong pointed forward. Xie Hongwen's face lit up. "Really? Yes. Then what are we waiting for? Hurry up and catch up with him and kill him for me." Xie Hongwen's expression became fierce as he suddenly shook his head. "No, no, no, stop him first. This young master wants to torture him. Directly killing him would be too easy for him. I want him to taste all the tortures in this world." "Young master, I'm afraid there's no need for that," Xie Yong said with a strange expression. "What do you mean?" Xie Hongwen squinted at him. Xie Yong smiled lightly. Once he enters this mountain valley, he's dead for sure. There's no need for us to pursue him. He definitely won't be able to leave this mountain valley alive. I'm afraid he's already dead. Why? How do you know? Xie Hongwen was even more confused now. Xie Yun smiled and explained, before coming here, the patriarch gave us some information about the Liu Yang Desert, one of which was about this mountain valley. It seems that when the Liu Yang Desert opened last time, a senior of our Xie family also took this path, but less than an hour after entering the mountain valley, he suddenly found countless fire spirit beasts gathered in the valley, surrounding a group of people and killing them. This group of people was made up of elite cultivators from various great forces, and there were more than 30 of them. At that time, the battle was fierce and our Xie family senior didn't want to get involved, so he quietly withdrew from the mountain valley. Later, when he left the Liu Yang Desert and inquired about the situation, he learned that of the more than 30 cultivators trapped in the mountain valley, none survived, and they didn't even make it to the treasure area. They all died in the mountain valley? Xie Hongwen's expression changed slightly. Although he was bragging a moment ago, when he thought of the countless fire spirit beasts rushing in, he couldn't help but pale. Yes, they died in the mountain valley, and the only one who knows the reason for their deaths is our Xie family senior. As for the information about this mountain valley, other than our Xie family, no one else should know. That Yang Kai entered it, naturally it was impossible for him to survive. Just now, because I had some doubts, I stopped, but after carefully confirming with Xie Yong, we found that the terrain here is exactly the same as the information left behind by our Xie family senior. That is to say, 400 years ago, our Xie family senior entered this mountain valley. When Xie Hongwen heard this, he clapped his hands fiercely and sighed, "What a pity, how could he die like this? This young master wanted to catch him." He sighed because he couldn't kill Yang Kai with his own hands. Chapter 1179. As soon as Xie Hongwen finished speaking, the three of them suddenly heard a rumbling sound coming from inside the valley. The source of the sound was extremely far away, but it still clearly reached their ears, and with each sound, the earth seemed to shake slightly. Xie Yun and Xie Yong looked at each other, their expressions changing slightly. Although they didn't see what was going on with their own eyes, this kind of power showed that there was an earth-shattering battle taking place in the depths of the valley. Xie Hongwen thought of something, and after being stunned for a moment, he cried out in joy, "Could this be caused by that trash?" Xie Yong frowned and hesitated. "It should be, after all, he's the only one who took this path, and I'm afraid he's already surrounded by fire spirit beasts." Good, haha, the heavens are helping this young master. Xie Hongwen laughed wildly, waving his hand and saying, "Come, let's go in and take a look. This young master wants to see that bastard die without a burial place with his own eyes, otherwise I won't be able to take this lying down." "Young master." Xie Yong and Xie Yun's expressions changed greatly, the former hurriedly stopping him. "This valley is definitely a forbidden area in the Liu Yang Desert, you can't come out even if you enter. Since that person is going to die, why should we take this risk? It's fine if something happens to the two of us, but young master's delicate body is precious, what if something happens to you?" Xie Yong knew that Xie Hongwen liked to listen to good words, and if he forcefully stopped him at this time, it would definitely arouse his disgust, so he could only try to persuade him in a roundabout way. Sure enough, after Xie Hongwen heard this, he felt that it made sense, but his expression was still somewhat restless. Compared to those invisible dangers, he was more willing to see how Yang Kai died. After living for so many years, no one had ever dared to humiliate him like Yang Kai, and it was even more impossible for someone to casually take his life. Every time Xie Hongwen thought about it, he couldn't sleep and eat in peace, filled with grief and resentment. That old bastard Chen Tong wasn't a good person, he was clearly bullied by an outsider, but not only did he not help him take revenge, he was also very polite to that bastard. Sooner or later, he would make Chen Tong pay the price. Xie Hongwen's thinking was different from ordinary people. Last time, Chen Tong saved his life from Yang Kai. Not only did he not know how to be grateful, but he also hated Chen Tong. Thinking of this, the anger in his heart and the desire to see Yang Kai's tragic death with his own eyes could not be suppressed. His expression became firm as he said, going in and watching from afar, "Is that okay?" Xie Yong was shocked and was about to persuade him again when Xie Hongwen said, "Since one of our Xie family's seniors was able to escape unscathed, there is no reason why we can't. Or are you two not confident in yourselves? If that's the case, you stay here, this young master will go alone, but you don't need to take the 300,000 saint crystals." How could this be? Xie Yong and Xie Yun became anxious. They had accepted the task of protecting Xie Hongwen precisely because of the 300,000 saint crystals and the benefits they could obtain from Liu Yang's desert. If they were not given the 300,000 saint crystals, they would immediately lose more than half of their profit. For a time, Xie Yong and Xie Yun both hesitated. They knew the dangers of this mountain valley better than anyone else. Before coming here, Xie Li had clearly told them that they absolutely could not enter this mountain valley. Xie Li wasn't worried about their safety, but rather that they wouldn't be able to protect Xie Hongwen. If something happened to Xie Hongwen, they wouldn't be able to live. But now that Xie Hongwen had made such a strong request, they couldn't refuse. Seeing the two hesitating, Xie Hongwen snorted and said, "As long as you take me in, we can watch that bastard die from afar. After we return, I will personally give you some benefits. Ian, with your identities, you shouldn't be qualified to learn the Xie family's Azura palm, right? This young master knows a thing or two about this martial skill." Hearing the words Azura palm, Xie Yun and Xie Yong hesitated for a moment before exchanging a glance, both of them seeing the light in each other's eyes. Xie Hongwen continued to strike while the iron was hot. "You can rest assured, we only need to watch from afar. This young master doesn't want you to kill him. When he dies, we'll immediately withdraw from the mountain valley." Xie Yong sighed heavily before turning to Xie Yun and asking, "What do you think?" Xie Yun frowned and helplessly said, "What else can we do? If they didn't listen to Xie Hongwen, there would be no benefits. If they listened to him, although they would have to take a little risk, the benefits would also be greater. Apart from accepting Xie Hongwen's proposal, there was no other way, unless they didn't want any benefits." After the two reached an agreement, Xie Yong said seriously, "Good, young master, we will take you there, but you must promise not to act rashly. If there is anything wrong, we will take you away quickly. I hope young master can agree to this." "Good, I agree, you're really long-winded, hurry up and go, if we're too late, that bastard may die," Xie Hongwen urged impatiently. The two Xie family cultivator had no choice but to continue to protect Xie Hongwen as they moved into the mountain valley. As they moved forward, the shaking of the mountain grew louder and louder. At the beginning, Xie Yong was still cautious, moving forward slowly, but he really couldn't stand Xie Hongwen's urging. Coupled with the fact that there really didn't seem to be any danger in the mountain valley, he couldn't help but speed up. Half a day later, the three of them saw a fiery red light in the distance. This fiery red light was obviously different from the color of the flowing flame sandfield's flames, and in fact, these streaks of red light had gathered together to form a sensational fireball over a large area. When he took a closer look, he realized that it wasn't a flame at all. It was clearly countless fire spirit beasts gathered together, and they seemed to be attacking someone who was surrounded by them. From time to time, huge mountain phantoms would fly through the middle of the fire spirit beasts and then crash down, each crash causing the ground to shake violently. Xie Yong and Xie Yun were dumbfounded. Although the two of them had long speculated from the information given by Xie Li that there were many fire spirit beasts in this mountain valley, it wasn't until they saw it with their own eyes that they realized the truth was far beyond their imagination. No wonder more than 30 elites from the various great forces had been wiped out here 400 years ago. With so many fire spirit beasts, even if an origin-returning realm master rashly entered Liu Yang Desert, they probably wouldn't be able to survive, not to mention that only Saint Kings could enter it. Xie Hongwen's performance was even more unbearable. Before, he had boasted about his strength, but now, after seeing the countless fire spirit beasts, he couldn't help shivering, his face extremely pale, unable to move. "Hide." Xie Yong reacted quickly, grabbing Xie Hongwen and hiding behind a nearby hill a few dozen meters high, at the same time summoning an exquisite artifact. This artifact released an invisible shield that enveloped the three of them, isolating their auras. Climbing up the hill, the 3 pairs of eyes cautiously glanced over, all of them shocked. There were so many fire spirit beasts, almost 10,000 of them. Xie Yong and Xie Yun thought that if they were surrounded like this, it wouldn't take more than a cup of tea's worth of time for them to die. But the cultivator named Yang Kai was surrounded and was actually killing them all. From the time the 3 of them heard the commotion until they rushed here, more than half a day had passed. For such a long time, how much Saint Chi had he consumed to continuously use this mountain-shaped artifact? How had he recovered? How many fire spirit beasts had he killed? Under the pressure of the mountain-shaped artifact, a large number of fire spirit beasts had simply disappeared. What surprised them even more was that after the 3 of them hid behind the hill for 4 to 6 hours, the slaughter continued without any sign of abating. Yang Kai, who was surrounded by fire spirit beasts, didn't show any signs of exhaustion. The number of fire spirit beasts killed by Yang Kai didn't seem to decrease either, maintaining a strange balance. This kind of strange slaughter seemed to continue until the end of the world. Why isn't he dead yet? Xie Hongwen muttered impatiently. He had caught a glimpse of the person surrounded by fire spirit beasts before and found that it was indeed Yang Kai, the one he hated to the bone. Xie Hongwen had thought this guy was about to die, but even now, he was still alive and kicking, which made Xie Hongwen very puzzled. "He's amazing," Xie Yong praised sincerely. Although they knew that Yang Kai was an elite, in their minds, Yang Kai's cultivation wasn't high, so even if he was an elite, his combat strength should be limited. But now, Xie Yong found that he had completely underestimated this person. If they were to fight one-on-one, Xie Yong had no confidence he could win. "Xie Yun, kill him for me now, this young master can't wait any longer," Xie Hongwen suddenly shouted fiercely. Both Xie Yong and Xie Yun were chosen by Xie Li for this task because of their unique abilities. The former was proficient in tracking, as long as he could find some clues, as long as he wasn't an origin-returning realm master, most people wouldn't be able to escape his tracking. In order to find someone in a place like Liu Yang Desert, his ability was indispensable. However, Xie Yun had another ability, the ability to kill with a single blow. To deal with an elite like Yang Kai, a sneak attack was undoubtedly the best way to deal with him, and this was Xie Yun's strength, so he was also chosen. After listening to Xie Hongwen's words, Xie Yun shook his head and said in a low voice, "Young master, I can't kill him from a distance, but there are too many fire spirit beasts gathered around this guy, and the purple shield behind him is also a defensive artifact. I can't kill him in this situation. Even if they attacked now, at most, they could only injure Yang Kai. If they couldn't kill him in a single blow, it was better not to act, lest they alert the enemy." Moreover, Xie Yun was also afraid that if they disturbed the fire spirit beasts, the 3 of them would be surrounded. He and Xie Yong didn't have the capital to kill tens of thousands of fire spirit beasts. "Then what should we do?" Xie Hongwen asked anxiously. His enemy was right in front of him, alive and kicking, yet he didn't have a chance to take revenge. This made him very annoyed, and he couldn't wait to rush over and kill Yang Kai right now. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.